Hey y'all, happy Friday. Hey Pammy Pooh, how you feeling, baby? How you feeling? Hey Terry, thank you, Terry. Thank you so much, Terry. Hi, Miss Avius Black. How are you, sweetie? Happy Friday. Y'all, please wear y'all mask. Everybody is getting the flu again. COVID. Please wear your mask. I was just on a content creator live. She's home in the bed now, sick. Yes, everybody's getting sick. Oh my God. Hey, Brittany. Yes, y'all, please put your mask on. I don't care where you go. I know a lot of people don't like the masks, but you have to wear them. COVID is never going to go away. And we know it flares back up real bad in the wintertime. Like, wear your mask. Even let your kids put on their mask going to school because they come back and get the whole house sick. Yeah, I was just watching another content creator right before I went live, and she's sick. I got a couple of supporters that hit me up behind the scenes, like maybe four of them. They're sick. Like you got to wear your mask, ladies. Everybody, you got to wear your mask. Hey, Carmen. Yeah, you got to put that mask on, even though if you don't want them on, you got to put them on. You got kids in school, let them kids wear their masks in school. You know, I don't care if they got to cover their mouth up. I mean, people sneeze and stuff and don't even cover their mouth. They cough and don't cover their mouth up. You know, it only take one time for somebody to sneeze, and there you go. The whole room, wherever you at, gonna get sick. So please wear your mask, honey. Yes. I'm like, God, don't everybody getting sick. I know I don't want to get sick. I don't care where I go. I still wear my mask. I don't care if it's in a supermarket, wherever I go. I put my mask on because the germs is still there. Thank you, Brittany. Avis, you are just everywhere. Yes, Avis is my supporter. She's a beautiful person. Right, Miss D. I wear my mask too. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yep. When I went out for a while this morning, I had my mask right on and I didn't take it back off until I left out and was on my way home. Yes, you have to wear your mask. I know a lot of people don't like to wear them and stuff. Maybe they aggravating and stuff, but hey, it's better wearing it than getting sick. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Matter of fact, I was on a content creator page this morning. She has it. Then another content creator, she dropped a video yesterday saying she has it and her oldest son. But the other two kids at the dad house, and she was saying she wished the dad could keep them until she can get over it. But she was so weak she couldn't even hardly talk. So it's still hidden here. It's still here. It's still here. People need to wear their masks. Hey Rebecca. Yes. Thank you, Brittany. Yep. So please wear your mask, ladies. Please, please, please. I'm begging y'all to wear your mask. Okay. Now, thank God today, Friday. I got my 2 days off. Oh, thank you, Lord. I'll be glad to see Fridays. I really do. Um, so y'all, we're gonna get into this. I know y'all seen what the title is on my story. Let me just so um today we're gonna watch this video, y'all. This pregnant mom was unalived by her boyfriend after they had a baby shower. So we're gonna watch that today. And I thank everybody for always coming and time in with me. I really appreciate y'all so much. Y'all don't know how much I appreciate y'all, but I do. So y'all know I don't wait till a lot of people come here. I just, do what I do. So let's get into it. Okay, hold on. Let me just take it back for. I want to take it back for the beginning.
Would have been one of the happiest moments in Darian Burley's life. The 26-year-old mother-to-be was beaming with excitement as blue confetti filled the air, revealing she was expecting twin boys. Her Facebook post captured her pure joy. "I get to see the twins and find out the gender today. I'm so excited to see them." Just weeks later, on June 29, 2020, Darian and her unborn twins' lives were cut short in a brutal act of violence. The same man who stood beside the gender reveal party, Maurice Kell-Smith, the father of her unborn children, would become her murderer. That morning, they shared breakfast at a Waffle House in Fort Worth, Texas. Here, police would discover Darion's body in the passenger seat of an abandoned car, with a heartbreaking detail that would shake even the most
Hey,
experienced
Joanne. Good
investigators.
evening.
The body and the console was her wallet, containing a sonogram picture of her unborn twin boys. These twin boys already had names, Maurice Kelso Smith Jr. and Marion Kyson Smith, and were due on October 17, 2020. Just weeks before her death, Darian shared her dreams of motherhood. "Having two boys on the way, I look at my entire life differently. All the drama MF try to put me in is so beneath me. IDC who said what or who did what. I'm so focused on being a better me for my two that I can't even entertain the distractions. My babies need they mama, so leave me out y'all drama." What transforms a moment of pure celebration into an act of unspeakable violence? How does someone watch the mother of their unborn children plan for their future, choose their names, and then make the conscious decision to end their lives? The answer lies in a pattern of events that began long before that fatal June morning, a pattern that might be familiar to many watching this video right now. The evidence that would seal Maurice Smith's fate began accumulating just 24 hours before Darion's death. On June 28, 2020, three people walked into a firearm shop at Will Rogers Auditorium: Maurice, his friend, and Darian herself. When payment issues arose, it was Darian who provided $250 to purchase the weapon. She had no way of knowing that this same firearm would be used against her the very next day. This single transaction set off a chain of events that would end at an auto shop over a dispute about a tire repair. The weapon, a .40 caliber pistol, would later be found along with blood-stained clothing
Mm,
as Smith
mm, mm,
attempted
mm.
to clean a stolen vehicle at his residence. But perhaps the most compelling piece of evidence lay quietly in Darion's wallet. That sonogram picture, a final testament to the lives lost that day. Every minute, somewhere in our country, another story like Darion's unfolds. Perhaps someone watching right now recognizes familiar patterns in their own life or in someone they know. This story could save a life, but only if you help share it. If you want to understand the warning signs that could have prevented this tragedy, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll expose every critical detail that led to that fatal morning. Leave a comment below sharing what you think might drive someone to commit such an act against the mother of their unborn children. Your insight could help others identify dangerous behaviors before it's too late. And if you believe this story needs to be heard, hit that like button and share this video. Because somewhere, someone might be living through similar circumstances, and your share could be their wake-up call. On July 14, 1993, in Fort Worth, Texas, Darian Burley was welcomed into a close-knit family as the fourth of six children. Born to Olga King Burley and Darrell Burley, she grew up surrounded by the love of a large extended family, including her grandmother, Mary King, along with numerous aunts, uncles, and cousins. Her family was more than just relatives. They were her foundation. As one of six siblings, Edric King, Allison and Bambi, married to Dale and Bambi, Sidney Burley, Chanlin Burley, and Leland Burley, Darian learned early on about the importance of family bonds and supporting one another. Growing up in Fort Worth shaped her into someone who valued community and connection. The Burley household was characterized by strong family values and unwavering support for one another. This environment fostered Darion's caring nature and her deep sense of responsibility toward family, traits that would later influence her
This man was
experience
an
of
evil
becoming a
man.
mother herself. Her upbringing in this tight-knit family unit played a crucial role in shaping her dreams and aspirations for her own future family. Darion's pursuit of higher education led her to Connors State College in Muskogee, Oklahoma, where she earned her associate's degree. Her academic journey reflected her determination to build a stable and successful future for herself. Rather than just a stepping stone, her education represented her commitment to personal growth and achievement. This drive for self-improvement remained constant throughout her life, as evidenced by her social media posts during her pregnancy. On May 9, 2020, she shared a touching reflection about becoming a mother. "I'm a mother now. Like it's Mother's Day, and I just never thought I could be a mom. I ain't think I could carry, but God gave me two. I'm so blessed and thankful. Happy Mother's Day, man." Her educational achievements at Connors State College weren't just about.
If there's one thing to know about
Yeah,
Randy's
I
car
don't
tax,
like
it's
these
that we're
commercials.
brutally
Hold on,
honest.
y'all.
Like that friend who's honest enough to tell you about the salon.
About earning a degree. They demonstrated her ability to set goals and achieve them, a quality she hoped to pass on to her children. She saw education as a pathway to providing better opportunities, not just for herself, but for her future family. Among her 5 siblings, Darion found unique ways to connect with each one. Her relationship with her sister Allison Bombi was particularly special, as they shared dreams and supported each other's life journeys. With her brothers Edric King and Leland Burley, she maintained strong bonds that brought both protection and companionship. Her connections with Sydney and Chanlin Burley added different dimensions to her life, each relationship contributing to who she was. Her siblings knew a side of Darion that few others saw: her infectious laugh, her determination to overcome challenges, and her unwavering loyalty to family.
Hey, Pooh. Thanks, Pink. Can you stop smacking in my ear? Y'all, look at this ponytail. It is breaking down on me.
She's so happy, about her twins, and look what he did to her. So sad.
Baby, you got no tweezers? There you go. Look at this right here. Can you just put this on the end of the leg? Please look all natural and stuff, glowing. Am I? Girl, yeah.
That's so sad.
Y'all look fat as hell. Ah! Baby, you pregnant.
They witnessed her transformation from their spirited sister to an expectant mother, sharing in her joy when she learned she was carrying twins. Her pregnancy brought new depth to these sibling relationships, as her brothers and sisters eagerly anticipated becoming aunts and uncles. Darion and
Okay,
Maurice
Miss
Smith's
Lewis.
connection stretched back to their high school days,
Hey, Auntie Terry.
evolving
Happy
into
Friday
an
to you
on-and-off
too.
relationship that would
Happy Friday
span
to you too,
years.
OG. I
At
needed you
32,
yesterday, babe. I needed
Maurice
you
was 6 years
yesterday.
older than Darion, and their history together was marked by periods of reconciliation and separation. Their relationship dynamic was complex from the start. Those who knew them saw moments of apparent happiness interspersed with troubling episodes. Smith's presence in Darion's life was persistent, even during their breaks, maintaining a connection that would ultimately be dangerous. Friends noticed that despite the ups and downs, Smith maintained a certain influence over Darion. This influence would later become evident in crucial moments, such as when she contributed $250 to help purchase the firearm at Will Rogers Auditorium, a decision that tragically tied their fates together. The relationship between Darion and Maurice showed concerning patterns long before the pregnancy. Smith's behavior exhibited classic signs of control and abuse, including accusations of infidelity and instances of physical violence. His actions became more erratic over time, particularly as his drug use intensified. By early June 2020, those close to Darion noticed alarming changes in Smith's behavior. His drug use had escalated significantly, and with it came increased volatility. The man who had once been part of Darion's high school memories was transforming into someone increasingly unpredictable, and dangerous. Despite these red flags, like many in similar situations, Darian remained hopeful about their future together, especially with the twins on the way. The promise of family life and Smith's role as the father of her children created a complex web of emotions and obligations that made it difficult to see the danger ahead. While the pregnancy brought moments of joy, it also marked a crucial turning point in Maurice Smith's behavior. Between the announcement and the gender reveal celebration, subtle changes began to emerge. Friends who attended their gatherings noted the stark contrast between Smith's public persona and his private behavior. During their pregnancy photo shoots and celebratory events, Smith would present himself as the excited father-to-be. But away from the cameras and social gatherings, a different reality was unfolding. His control over Darian intensified under the guise of protection and concern for their unborn children. The period between learning about the twins and their gender reveal party became a time of increasing isolation for Darian. Even as she shared her excitement about the twins on social media and with family.
Hold on, guys.
Jersey's expensive, and it's a
Can't
problem.
take these
John
doggone
Scott has a problem to
commercials.
solve.
Oh
He's
my
running
God.
the government to cut property taxes, tax credits for
Y'all
renters,
give me a
and
goal
more
today
taxes
for
for
$30
seniors.
super
I'm gonna cut your taxes
stickers
and solve this
or
problem.
a coffee if you don't mind.
She was navigating an increasingly complex situation at home. The same man who smiled for photos at their celebrations was becoming more possessive and volatile behind closed doors. The duality of their situation reflected a common pattern in troubled relationships: public displays of unity masking private turmoil. While Darian focused on preparing for motherhood, Smith's grip on their relationship tightened, setting the stage for the tragic events that would follow. Dr. Laura Stampley, a forensic psychologist who specializes in domestic violence cases, points to key behavioral patterns that emerge during Darian's pregnancy. Pregnancy often represents a critical escalation period in abusive relationships. The abuser may feel threatened by the impending changes and loss of control, leading to increased aggressive behavior. Looking at Smith's actions, Dr. Stampley identifies concerning escalation patterns. What we see here is textbook escalation: increased drug use, attempts to obtain a firearm, and growing possessiveness. The combination of
Thank you,
substance abuse and
Carmen.
domestic violence creates
Appreciate
a
you, love.
particularly volatile situation. The abuser's need for control often intensifies as the pregnancy progresses, viewing the upcoming birth as a threat to their dominance in the relationship. Most critically, Dr. Stampley notes, the period just before and after major life events, like a gender reveal or approaching due date, can trigger heightened aggression in abusive partners. The public celebration of these events may fuel private resentment and controlling behaviors, creating a dangerous disconnect between public perception and private reality. Take a moment now to reflect on what you've learned from Darian's story. The warning signs are often visible, but they can be easy to miss or dismiss. Your insight could help someone else recognize these patterns before it's too late. Drop a comment below, sharing what you think are the most concerning red flags in relationships that people often overlook. Have you ever witnessed behavior that made you worried about someone's safety? What did you do? Your engagement with this video isn't just about watching. It's about creating a community where we can openly discuss these vital issues. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to join our growing community, dedicated to sharing stories that matter. If this story has impacted you, give it a thumbs up so more people can learn from Darian's experience. Each like and share extends the reach of this important message, potentially helping someone who needs to hear it right now. In the weeks leading up to June 29, 2020, Maurice Smith's behavior shifted dramatically. The changes weren't subtle anymore. They were sharp turns toward increasingly aggressive and unpredictable conduct. His accusations against Darian intensified, and his control over her daily activities became more pronounced. Those who interacted with Smith during this period noticed his growing agitation and paranoia. His actions became more erratic, marked by sudden mood swings and heightened aggression. This behavioral shift wasn't just emotional, It manifested in physical abuse against Darion, a grim escalation from previous patterns. The situation had reached a critical point where Smith's unpredictability posed a clear danger. Yet, like many expectant mothers in similar situations, Darion remained hopeful that things would improve for the sake of their unborn children. Early June 2020 marked a dangerous intensification in Smith's substance abuse. His drug use had evolved beyond recreational consumption. It was now fueling increasingly volatile and paranoid behavior. The combination of drugs and his existing controlling tendencies created a powder keg situation. Those close to the situation observed how Smith's drug use affected his decision-making abilities, particularly regarding his relationship with Darion. The substances seemed to amplify his paranoid tendencies and accusations of infidelity. His drug-induced state made him more prone to sudden outbursts and irrational behavior. Under the influence, Smith's grip on reality became increasingly tenuous. The drugs weren't just damaging his own life, they were creating an environment of unpredictability and danger for Darion and their unborn twins. His substance abuse had become a critical factor in the escalating tension of their relationship. On June 28, 2020, a crucial sequence of events unfolded at the Will Rogers Auditorium. Unable to legally purchase a firearm due to his prior convictions, Smith orchestrated a plan involving a friend to acquire the weapon. What makes this incident particularly tragic is Darion's unwitting role in her own fate. When payment issues arose, she contributed $250 to facilitate the purchase. The transaction itself revealed the calculated nature.
So I was dating this guy, Chris, for years.
Oh, doing.
I wanted to buy a house. Chris didn't. Then I realized.
Of Smith's actions. He knew he couldn't legally own a firearm, so he manipulated others to achieve his goal. The fact that
Wow.
he brought Darion to the purchase location suggests a level of planning that would later become significant in the legal proceedings. The weapon in question was a .40 caliber pistol, the same one that would be used against Darion the very next day. This firearm purchase wasn't
Sad.
just a transaction.
So sad.
It was the acquisition of the murder weapon, bought with money from the victim herself. The cruel irony of Darion unknowingly contributing to the purchase of the weapon that would end her life and that of her unborn twins adds another layer of tragedy to these events. In Texas alone, the intersection of domestic violence, substance abuse, and firearms creates a lethal combination. According to the Texas Council on Family Violence, 204 women were killed by intimate partners in Texas in 2020. Of these cases, 67% involved firearms. Substance abuse plays a significant role in domestic violence incidents. National statistics show that drugs or alcohol are involved in 40 to 60% of domestic violence cases. When substances are involved, the risk of lethal violence increases by 11 times. Particularly concerning is the link between pregnancy and domestic violence. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists reports that homicide is a leading cause of death during pregnancy, with 20% of pregnancy-associated deaths resulting from homicide. Studies indicate that women facing abuse during pregnancy are 3 times more likely to become victims of homicide than those who aren't pregnant. In cases involving firearms, the presence of a gun in domestic violence situations increases the risk of homicide by 500%. This statistic becomes even more significant in cases where the perpetrator has a history of substance abuse. The morning of June 29, 2020, began ordinarily enough. Darion and Maurice Smith were seen having breakfast together at a Waffle House in Fort Worth. Security footage would later show them leaving the restaurant with no indication of the horror that would unfold just hours later. After breakfast, they noticed their tire needed air. They stopped at a gas station before heading to an auto shop that offered discounted services. What should have been a simple tire repair turned into a deadly confrontation. At the auto shop, Smith became agitated over the cost of the repair, leading to an argument with Darion. In those final moments, Smith retrieved the newly purchased .40 caliber pistol from the car. There, in broad daylight at an auto shop, he shot Darion at point-blank range, killing her and their unborn twins instantly.
Lord have mercy.
Shooting Darion, Maurice Smith's actions revealed his desperate attempts to escape justice.
Wow.
He drove to Mansfield, Texas, where he committed an armed robbery with forcing a woman from her vehicle at gunpoint. In his
He was
haste,
very
he
violent.
abandoned his own car, with Darian's body still in the passenger seat at the scene of the
What?
carjacking. When investigators discovered the abandoned vehicle, they found more than just evidence of a murder. Between Darian's body and the car's console lay her wallet, containing that poignant sonogram picture of the twins she would never get to meet. This detail would later become one of the most haunting aspects of the case for everyone involved. Law enforcement tracked Smith to his residence, where they found him attempting to destroy evidence. He was cleaning the stolen vehicle,
Hey, Miss
trying
Black.
to erase traces of his crimes.
Happy
But
Friday.
the
Yes,
evidence
that's crazy,
against him was
Joanne. That's
overwhelming.
crazy.
Officers recovered blood-stained clothing and the murder weapon, the same .40 caliber pistol that had been illegally purchased just the day before. Ballistic evidence confirmed what investigators already suspected. The recovered firearm matched the weapon used in Darian's murder. The gun that she had unknowingly helped purchase with her $250 contribution had become the instrument of her death. Every piece of evidence, from the blood-stained clothing to the ballistic matches, formed an unbreakable chain linking Smith to the murder of Darian and their unborn twins. Justice for Darian and her unborn twins came on February 5, 2024, in a Tarrant County courtroom. After presenting the overwhelming evidence, including Smith's escalating drug use,
So this
prior
was a year
assault
ago.
on Darian, and the circumstances surrounding the firearm purchase, the jury reached their verdict. Maurice
This
Kelso
month
Smith
made
was
a year. This is
Wherever
so
you go,
sad. Oh my God.
lead the way.
Wow.
found guilty of capital murder in the deaths of Darian Burley and their unborn twin boys. The sentence was definitive: life in prison without the possibility of parole. During the proceedings, the evidence painted a clear picture of premeditation, from the illegal firearm acquisition to the
Yeah.
final tragic moments at the auto shop. In the courtroom, Darian's family's statement resonated with profound grief. There are no winners here. Their words captured the devastating reality that 3 lives were lost, and countless others were forever changed by Smith's actions. For the Burley family, every milestone is now marked by absence. Holidays, birthdays, and family gatherings carry the weight of 3 empty chairs. Darian and the twin boys who would have brought new joy to their close-knit family. The twins' due date, October 17, 2020, passed without the celebration it should have held. Her siblings, Edric, Allison, Sydney, Chanlin, and Leland, lost not only their sister, but also the chance to be aunts and uncles to her sons. Her parents, Olga King Burley and Daryl Burley, were robbed of their daughter and grandsons, their future memories together stolen in a moment of senseless violence. The family now channels their grief into purpose. They keep Darian's memory alive by sharing her story, hoping it might save others from similar tragedy. Her mother's words echo their collective pain. The loss of Darian and her unborn children left a void that can never be filled. Their family gatherings, once complete with Darian's presence, now serve as bittersweet reminders of the lives that should have been. According to Patricia Henderson, Director of Family Violence Prevention, pregnancy often intensifies existing patterns of domestic violence. Across the globe, 1 in 3 women will experience intimate partner violence, but this risk doubles during pregnancy. Worldwide statistics paint a sobering picture. In the United States, homicide is the leading cause of death among pregnant women, with 20% of maternal deaths attributed to murder. Studies from the UK show that 30% of domestic violence cases start during pregnancy. Australian research indicates that women experiencing abuse during pregnancy are 3 times more likely to become victims of severe violence. In Canada, 40% of women who experience domestic violence report that it began during their first pregnancy. The most dangerous time, Henderson explains, is when a woman attempts to leave an abusive relationship. The risk of homicide increases by 75% during this period. What we saw in Darian's case, the escalation of control, substance abuse, and access to firearms, represents critical warning signs that demand immediate intervention. Recent global studies reveal that for every high-profile case like Darian's, there are countless others that go unreported. The World Health Organization estimates that 38% of all murders of women are committed by intimate partners, a percentage that rises significantly when pregnancy is involved. Darion's story doesn't end here. It continues through the impact it can have on others' lives. Your engagement with this video can help create real change. Each share could reach someone who needs to hear this
She was a
story
pretty
right
young
now.
lady.
If this video has moved you, please take action. Hit the like button and share it on your social media platforms. Someone in your network might be facing similar circumstances, and your share could be their lifeline to understanding they're not alone. Subscribe to True Crime Case Tapes for more stories that matter. By joining our community, you become part of a movement dedicated to raising awareness about domestic violence and preventing future
Yeah, she was
tragedies.
beautiful. She
The
was.
National Domestic
She looked
Violence
so cute,
Hotline is
pregnant.
available 24/7 at 1-800-799-7233. They have over 200 language interpreters ready to help. Remember, recognizing the warning signs early could save a life. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on Darion's story. Your perspective might help others recognize similar patterns in their own lives.
Now, I don't know, y'all, did she see red flags before she helped him purchase this weapon? I don't know. But I'm quite sure she might have did. Whew. It's just so heartbreaking, y'all. Why he had to do that to the kids? Like, wow. I mean, I'm quite sure she probably did see red flags. She probably did. Maybe she ignored them. But I always say you cannot ignore these red flags. You have to pay attention. You have to pay attention. You have to. Oh, wow. I'm glad he's off the street. I'm glad he has life. He will never see the street again to hurt anyone else again. Um, prayers to her family. I know they would never ever get over this. This is something they will always think about. But sometimes you can be so caught up in love until you still do see a little things that's not really right there. But sometimes you will love a guy so much until you would just let it go past your head. Things going to get better. We can work this out. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he's acting this way now because I'm pregnant. Maybe after the baby is born or the children is born, things may get better. But 9 times out of 10, things don't get better. When the child or children is born, sometimes things are spent even more out of control. And it can lead you into being unalive. So I always tell women from my perspective and what I cover, I say get out of it. I know sometimes it takes time to get out of it. I know sometimes you don't have the money, but if you're working, you have to start the planning. Putting the money up to the side. Don't tell him what you got. Once you feel like you got enough set up, go start finding an apartment. I always tell people if it comes down to a restraining order, get a restraining order out on your workplace, your children you have, because they ask you, what do you want the restraining order at? Your mom's house, your dad's house, your workplace, restraining order. He can't talk to your children, all of that until this can be reconciled in court. But you always, too, have to be careful who you are involved with, why you are planning your thoughts of moving, because you don't know, will this people or person turn, stay on you and go back and tell him, oh, yeah, she's planning to leave you. She's this, she's that. You know what I'm saying? Then you may not get out safely. You know what I'm saying? So if you are planning to get out safe, or you do have someone that's helping you to plan to get out safe, just make sure you can trust that person. I always say that. Make sure you can trust that person for us, telling them what's going on at that point. So that's the advice that I do, always try to give people when you are planning to leave a relationship. Oh, man. It's just so sad. Okay, I think this one here is. Let me see. I don't know if I did this one. I don't know. Just let me know, y'all, if I did this one. For the ones that always be in the chat all the time, just let me know. Because I be covering so many stories. And it is a story that I really want to cover from Atlanta.
Those with
I
Robinhood
think I can
Gold can
find that
enjoy a
story though.
3% IRA match.
I think the
Trim
father
minutes.
unalived the whole family. The story that I want to cover from Atlanta. So true, D. Yeah, you have to plan safely. You have to.
Is meant to be a celebration, the time when families gather to honor dads and make cherished memories. But on June 18th, 2017, in a quiet Detroit neighborhood, this special day would become forever marked by an act of violence that shattered a family and left three
Hey,
children without
open
a
book,
mother.
baby,
The
baby.
sun had barely begun to set on that summer evening when gunshots pierced the air in the 2006 Zool block of Avon Avenue. Inside one of the homes, a 14-year-old boy was absorbed in his video games, the familiar sounds of digital adventures filling his room. He dismissed the loud pops he heard as nothing more than ordinary neighborhood noise. But his 4-year-old sister knew different. She had witnessed something no child should ever see.
Open book.
In
I
those
just thought
devastating
about it. I gotta
moments,
tell you how to
the
get into
threat
your
made
Google
weeks
thing
earlier would come to
for your block
pass,
thing.
transforming a day of
I'm gonna send you the
celebration
message as soon
into
as I
one
get
of
out live.
profound loss. This is the story of a mother's final moments, a killer's deadly promise, and the lasting impact of domestic violence that continues to echo through one Detroit family to this day. At 42, Latrice Morris Dorsey radiated warmth and determination. A dedicated mother of three, she poured her heart into creating a stable, loving home for her children, 14-year-old Justin, who shared her bright smile, and her daughters, including 4-year-old Jade, who inherited her mother's spirited personality. As one of three daughters herself, Latrice held a special place in her father James Morris's heart. She was more than just a mother. She was a beacon of hope and resilience. In the early summer of 2017, Latrice had taken a bold step toward a fresh start. She moved into a new home in Detroit, ready to turn the page on a troubled chapter in her life. After ending a 4-year relationship that had grown increasingly difficult, she was embracing change and new possibilities. Her decision to prioritize her happiness and her children's well-being showed the strength that defined her character. But sometimes, the courage to choose a better path comes at an unimaginable price. For Latrice, the desire for a new beginning would collide with someone's refusal to let go. 2 weeks before Father's Day, Paul Dorsey received a chilling phone call. On the other end of the line was Earl Maxwell, his ex-wife Latrice's former boyfriend. Maxwell's voice carried
Open book,
deadly
I was gonna
warmth
tell you
that
that.
proved to be more than empty words. Can I see your
Open
wife?
book crazy. I
Demanded
love
Paul.
her.
The threat wasn't isolated. Maxwell's calls became persistent, each one more menacing than
Open
the
book, I was
last.
gonna tell you that they came
Even
to my
after
mind this
Latrice cut off her
morning.
phone, Maxwell's determination to reach her grew stronger. He told family members he would shoot her in the head if he couldn't contact her. Each threat painted a clear picture of a man who refused
Open
to
book is
accept rejection.
crazy.
No one could have known that Maxwell wasn't just making idle threats. He was making a promise, one that he intended to keep. As Latrice went about her daily life, caring for her children and building their future, a countdown had begun. The hands of time were moving toward a Father's
Hey,
Day
Miss
that
V,
would
happy
end in
Friday.
tragedy, all because one man decided that if he couldn't have Latrice Morris Dorsey, no one would. Every day across America, threats of violence escalate into tragic realities. The story of Latrice Morris Dorsey is more than a true crime case. It's a wake-up call about the devastating consequences of domestic violence. As we continue to unfold the events that led to that fateful Father's Day, we invite you to be part of this important conversation. Drop a comment below, sharing any warning signs you believe people should never ignore in relationships. Your insight could help someone recognize danger
Never
before it's too
ignore
late.
what you see and
Have
never
you or
ignore
someone you
what you
know ever
hear.
faced a situation where threats
Period.
escalated? Share your story. Your experience might save a life.
Never.
If this is your first time discovering true
Especially
crime
if you
case
see it
tapes,
more than
we're
once and
committed
you
to
hear it
bringing
more
you
than
cases
once.
that matter, stories that need to be told, and lessons that could protect lives. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to join our community of critical thinkers and advocates for justice. Give this video a thumbs up if you believe these stories need to be shared, and help us spread awareness by sharing it with someone who needs to hear this message. Together, we can make a difference, one story at a time. For 4 years, Latrice Morris Dorsey and Earl Maxwell shared a life together. Like many relationships, theirs began with promise, two people finding connection in Detroit's bustling city life. To outsiders, Maxwell appeared to fit seamlessly into Latrice's world. He became a familiar presence in her home, interacting with her 3 children and becoming part of their daily routines. But relationships often revealed it.
I love Rise
Oh,
mushroom
yeah.
coffee, and not just because I look good drinking it.
Hello there.
Their true nature over time. Those closest to Latrice began noticing subtle changes in her demeanor. Her sister, Megan Morris, observed how the dynamic between the couple shifted. While Latrice maintained her independence and strong spirit, Maxwell's behavior suggested a growing need for control.
Oh my God.
As the years passed,
Exactly,
the
Miss
facade
P.
began to crack.
Especially when you're in a,
What started as a
you just
partnership
meeting a
between
guy
two
and you getting,
adults
you
evolved
getting to
into
know
something
him.
more complicated.
You have to pay attention to what he say and what he
always
do.
putting her children first, found herself increasingly caught between maintaining peace and protecting her autonomy. The woman who had always been known for her warm smile and dedication to family was living with an undercurrent of tension that those around her could sense, but couldn't fully understand. Throughout these 4 years, Latrice never lost sight of her role as a mother. She continued creating a loving home environment, celebrating her children's achievements, and planning for their future. But beneath the surface, the foundation of her relationship with Maxwell was showing signs of strain that would eventually lead to its collapse. By early 2017, Latrice Morris Dorsey made a decision that would change everything. She ended her relationship with Earl Maxwell. The choice wasn't impulsive. It came from a mother's instinct to protect her family's future. Latrice had begun to see clearly what her relationship had become, and she chose courage over comfort. After the breakup, Latrice took decisive steps toward independence. She found a new home in Detroit, a modest house on Avon Avenue that represented more than just a change of address. It was her declaration of freedom, a fresh canvas for her and her children to paint a new future. The move energized her spirit. Friends noticed a lightness in her step that had been missing for months. Latrice didn't just change her location. She changed her entire outlook. She started dating someone new, allowing herself to believe in
Beautiful young
possibilities
lady.
again. Her children, particularly Justin and Jade, adapted to their new environment with the resilience that their mother had taught them. The family settled into new routines, creating memories in their new space, finding joy in simple moments together. Her father, James Morris, watched with pride as his daughter rebuilt her life. At 72, he had raised 3 daughters to be strong, independent women, and Latrice was living those values. She maintained her full-time job, attended her children's activities, and dared to dream about tomorrow. She even changed her phone number, a small but significant step toward claiming her independence. But Maxwell watched these changes from a distance, and each step Latrice took toward freedom seemed to fuel his growing obsession. Her happiness without him became an intolerable reality he couldn't accept. While Latrice was moving forward, looking ahead to brighter days, Maxwell remained fixated on the past, unable or unwilling to let go of what he believed he had lost. The distance between their two paths would soon become a dangerous chasm. In the weeks following the breakup, Maxwell's behavior transformed into a calculated pattern of intimidation. His actions revealed a man whose hurt had morphed into something far more dangerous. When Latrice changed her phone number to avoid his calls, Maxwell found other ways to reach her, proving that barriers meant nothing to his determination. His first move was to contact Paul Dorsey, Latrice's estranged husband. These weren't casual check-ins, they were persistent, troubling calls that grew more frequent and intense. Maxwell's desperation to maintain some connection to Latrice's life became evident in his relentless pursuit of information about her whereabouts and activities. The harassment extended beyond phone calls. Family members began receiving disturbing messages about Latrice. Maxwell's words carried specific threats. He spoke about shooting her in the head with frightening clarity.
Oh my
These weren't
God.
vague expressions of anger.
Oh
They
my
were
God.
detailed descriptions of violence he envisioned inflicting upon her. Despite Latrice's clear desire to move on, Maxwell's obsession only grew stronger. He monitored her movements, gathered information about her new relationship, and made his presence known in ways that left no
Yes,
doubt
don't he look
about his
crazy,
intentions.
Joanne?
His behavior
Yes.
followed a textbook pattern of escalation that domestic violence experts would later identify as classic signs of impending tragedy. Leading research has shown that rejection-triggered violence follows predictable patterns, especially when abusers demonstrate specific behaviors.
Yeah, he looked like a cuckoo bird. What is wrong with some of these men? Like, you can't move on?
In cases like Latrice's, experts point to 3 critical danger signals that demand immediate attention: stalking after separation, explicit death threats, and the refusal to accept a partner's new relationship. Detective Marilyn Burris, who has investigated domestic violence cases for 15 years, explains how these behaviors create a perfect storm of danger. When someone loses their sense of control over a partner, they often try to regain it through fear. The most dangerous time for any victim is when they've just left the relationship, especially if they begin dating someone new. Professor Tom Hart from the University of Michigan's Department of Criminology provides context. What we see in these cases is an escalation driven by the abuser's need for power. They view their partner as property, and the loss of control triggers increasingly aggressive behavior. The specific threat to shoot someone in the head, as we saw in this case, indicates premeditation rather than just emotional outburst. The statistics
Yeah.
support these observations. Studies show that 75% of domestic violence homicides occur when victims attempt to leave their abusers. The presence of stalking behaviors increases the risk of homicide by 400%. When threats involve specific methods of violence, as in Latrice's case, the danger level rises significantly. FBI behavioral analyst Rick Elliott adds, "What makes these cases particularly volatile is the public nature of the threats. When abusers openly declare their intentions to family members, they're often seeking an audience for what they view as justified retribution. They're not hiding their plans because they've already rationalized their actions." Taking a moment here in our investigation of Latrice's story, we need to address something crucial. Many of you watching right now might recognize similar patterns in relationships around you, whether it's a friend, family member, or even your own situation. This is why your engagement with this content matters more than you might think. Hit pause right now and share your thoughts in the comments below. What warning signs do you believe society often dismisses as normal relationship problems that actually deserve immediate attention? Your insight could help someone identify dangerous behaviors before they escalate. If you're finding value in this detailed examination of domestic violence warning signs, make sure you're subscribed to True Crime Case Tapes. We carefully research each case to bring you these critical insights that could save lives. Click that notification bell to join our community of active viewers who help spread awareness about these important issues. In the next segment, we'll reveal how these escalating threats led to that tragic Father's Day, evidence that would later prove crucial in bringing justice for Latrice Morris Dorsey. June 18, 2017, began like any other summer Sunday in Detroit. The temperature climbed into the mid-80s as families across the city prepared to celebrate Father's Day. In the 2002 block of Avon Avenue, Latrice Morris Dorsey was home with her children, the windows open to catch the afternoon breeze. Earlier that week, Latrice had gone about her regular routines, showing no outward signs of the fear she must have carried. She attended her children's activities, maintained her work schedule, and continued settling into their new home. But beneath this appearance of normalcy, a clock was ticking. Maxwell's threats hung in the air, growing heavier with each passing day. That Sunday afternoon, 14-year-old Justin retreated to his room, immersing himself in video games, a typical teenage escape on a summer day. 4-year-old Jade played in the living room, where her mother could keep a watchful eye on her. The scene was ordinary, peaceful even, the kind of moment that usually fades into the blur of everyday memories. As the day progressed, neighbors would later recall seeing Maxwell's car circling the block. He had learned their new address, despite Latrice's efforts to keep it private. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Avon Avenue as he made his final pass around the neighborhood. Inside their home, Latrice and her children remained unaware of his presence. What happened next would be recalled through the innocent eyes of a 4-year-old child. Jade was in the living room with her mother when Earl Maxwell entered their home. The little girl, too young to comprehend the gravity of the moment, became witness to an act of violence that no child should ever have to see. The sound of gunfire shattered the evening calm. Maxwell fired repeatedly, each shot echoing through the house. 10 times the weapon discharged, with Latrice's 4-year-old daughter present throughout the entire horrific event. As her mother fell,
What is going
Jade stood
on with these
frozen,
men? They
her
just do
young
this
mind
stuff
struggling
in
to
front of the
process the nightmare
children,
unfolding
or they
before
do it to
her.
the mother
In those
and the
terrifying
children.
moments, Jade displayed remarkable presence of mind for a child so young. Rather than remaining in the living room where danger still lurked, she ran toward her brother's room. In his room, Justin was absorbed in his video game, headphones creating a barrier between him and the chaos erupting in his home. When he first heard the sounds, his teenage mind rationalized them as normal neighborhood noise, perhaps fireworks or a car backfiring. It was a split-second assumption that would haunt him in the years to come. Then, his little sister burst into his room, her words shattering his world. "My mom is dead. He killed my mom. My mom is shot."
Oh,
Justin ripped off his headphones, his game forgotten as Jade's words registered. In that moment, the 14-year-old boy was forced to confront a reality no child should face. Racing to the living room, Justin found his mother gravely wounded. His actions in these moments showed extraordinary courage as he rushed to her side. Latrice Morris Dorsey, the woman who had given him life and love, was taking her final breaths. As he held her, Justin called out for help, his voice carrying through the open windows into the summer evening.
Whether you're
oh my
setting new
God, that
goals
is
or
so
continuing to commit
sad.
to old ones, it's always the right
I
time to
mean,
make sure you're
man, it's
getting
some
the
monsters
nutrition
out
you
here.
deserve.
Time seemed to stop as Justin cradled his mother. The boy who had spent countless hours playing video games was now facing the most real and devastating moment of his young life. He spoke to her, pleaded with her to hold on, his words mixing with tears as he felt her life slipping away. The warmth of the June evening contrasted sharply with the cold reality settling over him. These precious final moments between mother and son became both a blessing and a burden, a chance to say goodbye, but also memories that would stay with Justin forever. In his arms, Latrice took her last breath, her son's love the final earthly comfort she would know. As Justin's cries echoed through the neighborhood, his voice carried a pain that touched everyone who heard it. Ron Wilson, a neighbor who had known the family since they moved to Avon Avenue, rushed to the house. Finding Justin holding his mother, Wilson immediately began CPR, refusing to give up, even as the gravity of the situation became clear. Other neighbors converged on the house, drawn by the commotion. Some helped by calling emergency services, while others focused on protecting Jade and Justin from seeing any more than they already had. The community's immediate response revealed the best of human nature in the face of tragedy. Strangers becoming protectors, neighbors becoming family. Within minutes, the peaceful Father's Day evening transformed into a scene of flashing lights and urgent activity. Emergency responders arrived to find a community already rallied around the Morris Dorsey children. As paramedics worked, neighbors formed a protective circle around Justin and Jade, shielding them from the harsh reality unfolding in their home. James Morris, Latrice's 72-year-old father, received the call every parent dreads. He rushed to the scene, arriving to find his grandchildren surrounded by caring neighbors. The man who had raised 3 daughters now faced the unthinkable task of saying goodbye to one of them. His words, spoken through tears, captured the depth of his loss. "I had 3 daughters. I had 3 beautiful daughters, and he put a hole in my heart. The news spread quickly through Detroit's tight-knit communities. By nightfall, family members, friends, and even strangers began gathering outside the Morris Dorsey home. They brought candles, flowers, and prayers, creating an impromptu vigil that would grow over the coming days. Their presence sent a powerful message. Latrice's children would not face this darkness alone. As the community grieved, Detroit police launched an intensive search for Earl Maxwell. Investigators quickly gathered evidence at the scene, recovering key details about the shooting. Maxwell had fled the scene immediately after the shooting. Sources close to the investigation reported that he disposed of the murder weapon, though its location remained unknown. For 2 days, Maxwell's whereabouts were a mystery as police worked to track him down. Then, on June 20th, 2017, Maxwell made an unexpected move. He walked into the Detroit Police Department and surrendered himself to authorities. During initial questioning, he
As he
attempted to claim the
should.
shooting was accidental, stating, "I had my gun in my right hand, and she tried to take my gun, and she grabbed my wrist. She twirled it around, and the gun was going off the whole time."
Liar.
But the evidence told a different story. The nature of Latrice's injuries, Jade's eyewitness account, and the documented threats painted a picture of calculated violence. On June 22, 2017, Maxwell was arraigned on charges of first-degree murder and felony firearm possession. The investigation continued to build a solid case. Detectives worked meticulously, gathering additional evidence and testimonies that would prove crucial in the legal proceedings to come. Their thorough work would ensure that Latrice's children would not be called to testify, sparing them further trauma. The pursuit of justice for Latrice Morris Dorsey moved through the Wayne County court system with steady purpose. While Maxwell initially faced first-degree murder charges, prosecutors remained focused on securing a conviction that would keep him behind bars for decades to come. During preliminary hearings, the evidence mounted. Paul Dorsey's testimony about Maxwell's explicit threats proved crucial. He recounted the multiple phone calls where Maxwell declared his deadly intentions, establishing a clear timeline of premeditation. The prosecution built a compelling case around these documented threats, Jade's eyewitness account, and the brutal nature of the shooting. Maxwell's defense began to crumble in the face of overwhelming evidence. His initial claim of an accidental discharge couldn't explain the 10 gunshot wounds revealed by the autopsy. As the reality of his situation became clear, Maxwell made a decision that would spare Latrice's children from testifying. He agreed to plead guilty to second-degree murder. On June 7, 2018, almost a year after that tragic Father's Day, Earl Maxwell stood before the court for sentencing. Wayne County prosecutor Kim Worthy emphasized the horrific nature of the crime, particularly noting the presence of Latrice's children during the murder. The judge, considering both the brutality of the crime and its impact on the family, delivered the sentence, 25 to 50 years in prison. The sentence meant Maxwell would be elderly before having any chance at freedom. For Latrice's family, it provided a measure of closure, though no prison term could truly compensate for their loss. The impact of Latrice's murder rippled through her family like aftershocks from an earthquake. For James Morris, the loss of his daughter left a void that could never be filled. The 72-year-old father, who had raised 3 daughters, now
Yes,
faced a
Miss
future
Black, it
with
is
an empty
sad.
chair
Very
at family
sad.
gatherings, a missing voice in family conversations, a daughter's love stolen by violence. The greatest weight fell on Latrice's children. 4-year-old Jade, too young to fully comprehend the permanence of her loss, would grow up with only fading memories of her mother's embrace. Her innocent eyes had witnessed something no child should see, leaving emotional scars that would require years of healing and support. The Morris family rallied together, determined to preserve Latrice's memory and provide stability for her children. They shared stories of her strength, her laughter, her dedication to family. These stories became lifelines, connecting Jade and Justin to the mother whose life was cut short. Family gatherings became both a celebration of Latrice's life and a reminder of her absence. For Megan Morris, losing her sister meant losing a confidant and best friend. She stepped forward to help guide her niece and nephew. Honoring her sister's memory through her dedication to their well-being. The family's unity in the face of tragedy demonstrated the enduring power of love over violence. In the years following his mother's murder, Justin Dorsey transformed his pain into purpose. The young man who held his mother in her final moments refused to let tragedy define his future. Instead, he honored her memory through remarkable achievements that would have made her proud. 4 years after that devastating Father's Day, Justin's academic record told a story of determination. He maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA throughout high school, channeling his mother's values of education and perseverance. Each assignment, each test, became an opportunity to prove that violence couldn't destroy his potential. On the football field, Justin found another avenue for his resilience. His dedication to the sport, combined with his academic excellence, caught the attention of college recruiters. His hard work paid off when he earned a football scholarship to Ferris State University. The achievement represented more than athletic success.
His mom will be so proud
It
of
was a
him.
testament to his mother's dream of seeing her children pursue higher education. At Ferris State, Justin chose to major in physical therapy, a career path that would allow him to help others heal and recover. His choice reflected the compassion he'd learned from his mother, turning his own experience with trauma into a mission to support others. Justin's story became an inspiration to other young people facing seemingly insurmountable challenges. Without bitterness, he transformed his loss into motivation, proving that tragedy doesn't have to destroy dreams. His journey from that terrible night to academic and athletic success honored his mother's memory in the most powerful way possible, by building the future she had always wanted for him. The murder of Latrice Morris Dorsey stands as a powerful reminder that domestic violence threats must never be dismissed. Her case highlighted how the most dangerous time for victims often comes after they've taken steps to leave their abusers, when they're finally seeking freedom and a fresh start. Statistics show that Latrice's story reflects a pattern seen across the country. When victims attempt to leave abusive relationships, the risk of lethal violence increases dramatically. Her case underscores the critical importance of taking threats seriously, especially when abusers make explicit statements about their intentions. The tragedy spurred local Detroit organizations to strengthen their support networks for domestic violence survivors. They enhanced coordination between law enforcement, victim advocacy groups, and emergency services. New protocols emerged for handling cases where explicit threats had been made, recognizing that words often precede violent actions. The response to Latrice's case also revealed gaps in the system that needed addressing. Questions arose about how to better protect victims during the volatile period after leaving an abusive relationship. Her story became a catalyst for discussions about improved protective measures, especially in cases where children might be exposed to violence. For law enforcement and domestic violence advocates, Latrice's case serves as a crucial training example. It demonstrates how quickly situations can escalate from threats to deadly violence, and why every threat must be treated as a potential prelude to tragedy. As we conclude Latrice's story, remember that similar situations are unfolding right now in communities across our country. Your engagement with this content goes beyond true crime. It's about understanding how to prevent these tragedies before they occur. Take a moment right now to save this number, 1-800-799-SAFE. This is the National Domestic Violence Hotline, available 24/7. Share it with someone who might need it. You never know whose life you might save. If this story moved you, turn that emotion into action. Like this video to help it reach more viewers. Share it with your community. These conversations, though difficult, could save lives. Subscribe to True Crime Case Tapes if you haven't already, and click that notification bell. We're committed to bringing you cases that matter, stories that make a difference. Most importantly, leave a comment below, sharing what you learned from Latrice's story. What warning signs do you think people often overlook? Your insight could help someone recognize danger before it's too late. For Justin and Jade, their mother's story has become a powerful legacy, one that continues to raise awareness and potentially save lives. By sharing these stories, we honor victims like Latrice and help prevent future tragedies. Remember, domestic violence thrives in silence. Let's break that silence together.
Hold on.
When you hear music like this, you want to take.
Okay, that was the last one. Hold on. That, ooh, baby. Y'all got kids, please just talk to your children because it's violent. It really is. And sometimes y'all, I know like a lot of people, say like it takes a long time to get to know a person, and it does. I mean, sometimes you can be married to a person for 10 years, 20 years, and you may think you really know that person, and you may not really know that person. You may not know that man and be like, oh my God, what did I marry? Did I really marry a monster? Because you really don't know. You don't know. You may marry somebody and don't know they have deep rooted mental issues, mental illness. I'll say that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not saying don't get married because everybody deserves to be married. Everybody deserves to be happy in a relationship. But I'm just saying this to say you really don't know a person. That's what I'm trying to say. So, oh, Lord. Let me see here. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I did this one. Okay, wait, is this the one I wanted to do? Oh, this one I want to do Monday. This one here, I seen this one. And okay, matter of fact, I'm gonna do this one Monday and the other one Monday. So let me just go back because I got two good ones for Monday. So I'm gonna do those Monday. Okay, this is the pastor caught his wife in bed with a member. Oh Lord, let's check it out, y'all.
Living with opioid addiction can be a struggle. Trapped in a cycle of opioid use.
So, like I said, everybody deserves to be married, be in a relationship, be happy. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying, just look out for the signs before you think about talking about marriage, before you think about calling this man your man, that y'all are in a committed relationship. Think about it before you start letting him meet your children, your mother, your sisters. Think about things before you start letting him know where you live at, where your family live at. You know what I'm saying? Think about a lot of things. Sit back and just look, observe, watch him. Don't let him overpower you and start asking you more questions about yourself than you're asking about him. Because 9 times out of 10, when a man start to overpower you and start to asking you more than what you're asking him, that's some things as a red flag too. Okay, so always be careful with that too. A lot of women, they be so glad to meet a guy that starts telling the guy too much of their business about their family, their children. He'll start asking, oh, let me meet your mom, let me meet your kids, let me meet this person, that person. That's a red flag, y'all. Okay, because a guy gonna take his time until you feel like you're comfortable enough to bring him around your mom, your kids, different things like that. So don't never let a guy start to overpower you with your thoughts and what you're thinking and what you want to do. Because when a guy do that, that is red flags. Because a real man, he's going to let you take time out to, you get to know your family, his family, or whatever. Things going to move kind of slow. You know what I'm saying? But when a guy want to move fast, that is a red flag. Okay? That is a red flag. Okay? And I always say it's nothing wrong with dating. But I feel like date daytime, not nighttime. Okay, you got more people out in restaurants and stuff like that. In the malls. If y'all want to meet at a mall and y'all want to sit at a restaurant in there, and you want to eat. It's more people. I mean, if I meet a guy, he tell me, "Oh, let's go out tonight. We can meet up." No, I'm not going nowhere with you at night. We're gonna meet up in a public place during the daytime in the right hours of the day. Okay, we can do brunch together or whatever. I'm not picking you up You're not picking me up. You get in your car, I get in my car. You know what I'm saying? If you choose to, you feel comfortable of letting him lead first. If you feel like he's gonna follow you, you know what I'm saying? Let him lead first. You know what I'm saying? If you got to take another hour or hour and a half to get to your house because you taking another route to get to your house or whatever you feel comfortable with, you do it. But I prefer for you ladies to meet up in uh in a daytime setting. I feel the nighttime is just not good. I mean, that's just how I feel. Everybody's different. How did he find out where she lived? Well, they was dating. They was dating, and she told him. Yeah, and that's why I'm saying the things I'm saying now. Maybe she didn't get time to know him very well. She just started. She told him where she lived. He started coming there and stuff, and that's how he found out where she lived at. She told it.
Withdrawal and
Well,
cravings. Sublocade is for adults with moderate to...
Reverend Matthew Washington stood at the pulpit, his fingers tracing the worn edges of his father's Bible. The leather-bound tome had been passed down through generations of preachers in his family, each adding their own notes and wisdom to its margins. Matthew's own neat script filled the spaces between verses, testament to countless hours of study and reflection. At 45, Matthew cut an imposing figure.
This pastor
His
is
deep-set
evil.
eyes, usually alight with passion when he preached, now held a haunted look as he gazed out over the empty...
Now, y'all, how this pastor, right? Well, Lord have mercy. No, well, let me say this. Okay. The pastor, y'all, he caught his wife in the bed with a member. I guess, yeah, a member of the church, right? So his revenge back for the wife, when he caught the wife in bed with a member of the church, he filmed it. He was, filming it at the house. So to get her back in revenge, he went to the church and y'all, he played it in the church. Okay, so y'all can look the rest for yourself.
Empty sanctuary. For 20 years, he had led this congregation, guiding them through personal trials and communal challenges. He had married countless couples, baptized their children, and buried their elders. The church was more than just a building to him. It was the beating
And
heart.
after this done, I want y'all to tell me who was wrong and who was right. Now, I don't think neither one of them was right.
A sense of belonging. He closed his eyes, trying to center himself through prayer, but the faces of two women kept intruding on his thoughts. Monica, his wife of 15 years, a dedicated nurse whose gentle hands had tended to the sick and elderly in their community. And Vanessa, his ex-girlfriend from college, a woman who had recently reappeared in his life, stirring up old feelings and new complications. Matthew's hand clenched around the Bible, his knuckles turning white with the force of his grip. In his pocket, his phone felt heavy, laden with the weight of its contents. A video that would shatter the foundations of his marriage, his ministry, and perhaps even his faith. Little did he know, as he stepped down from the pulpit and made his way towards the church doors, that his actions in the coming days would set in motion a chain of events that would rock not just his own world, but the entire community to its very core. The first cracks in Matthew Washington's world appeared on a crisp autumn morning, 6 weeks before that fateful night in the church. The day had started like any other. An early rise, a quick breakfast, and a kiss goodbye to Monica before she left for her shift at Harlem Hospital Center. Matthew watched from the window as Monica's car disappeared around the corner, a small frown creasing his brow. Lately, he'd noticed subtle changes in his wife's behavior. She seemed distracted, often lost in thought, and there was a new guardedness about her that he couldn't quite place.
Jersey's expensive, and it's a problem. Josh Gottheimer's a problem solver, and he's running for governor to cut property taxes.
I can't stand these commercials. I ain't lying.
I'm going to cut your taxes and solve this problem.
Well, solve the problem.
Very active, but my spine was so
God darn, these commercials
pain level was beyond control. So like every...
Shaking off his unease, Matthew turned his attention to the day ahead. He had a busy schedule, a meeting with the church board, counseling sessions with parishioners, and sermon preparation for Sunday. But as he moved through his tasks, a nagging feeling persisted, like a splinter in his mind that he couldn't quite extract. It was during his lunch break that the first real seed of doubt was planted. Matthew had decided to surprise Monica with lunch at the hospital, something he hadn't done in months. As he approached the nurse's station, a hushed conversation caught his attention. "Saw them together again," a voice whispered urgently. "I'm telling you, something's going on." "Shh, you can't just go around spreading rumors like that," another voice admonished, "especially not about Nurse Washington. She's the Reverend's wife, for heaven's sake." Matthew froze, his heart suddenly pounding in his chest. He wanted to step forward, to demand answers, but his feet seemed rooted to the spot. The conversation continued, oblivious to his presence. "I know what I saw, Tanya. They were in that little cafe on 125th Street, heads close together, looking mighty cozy, and it's not the first time either. Even if that's true, it doesn't mean anything. They could just be friends." Friends don't look at each other the way those two were looking at each other. Trust me, there's more to this story. Unable to listen any longer, Matthew retreated, his mind reeling. He left the hospital without seeing Monica, the untouched lunch feeling like a lead weight in his hands. That evening, when Monica returned home, Matthew watched her closely. She moved about the kitchen with her usual efficiency, chatting about her day at the hospital. But now, with his senses heightened by suspicion, Matthew noticed things he hadn't before. The way she avoided direct eye contact, the slight tremor in her hands as she prepared dinner, the forced cheerfulness in her voice. "How was your day, honey?" Monica asked, setting a plate in front of him. "Did you get a lot done?" Matthew hesitated, torn between confronting her with his suspicions and maintaining the facade of normalcy. In the end, fear of what he might discover held him back. "It was fine," he replied, forcing a smile. "Just the usual." As they ate in what felt like strained silence, Matthew's mind raced. Who was this mysterious person Monica had been seen with? What were they to each other? And how long had this been going on? As the days passed, Matthew found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Suspicion, hurt, and anger warred within him, threatening to spill over into his daily interactions. He threw himself into his work, spending long hours at the church, partly to avoid confronting Monica, and partly to seek solace in the familiar routines of his ministry. It was during one of these late nights at the church that the past came knocking, quite literally, on his office door. "Come in," Matthew called, not looking up from the sermon notes he was reviewing. The door creaked open, and a familiar voice sent a jolt through him. "Hello, Matthew. It's been a long time." Matthew's head snapped up, his eyes widening as they fell upon a face he hadn't seen in over 2 decades. "Vanessa?" Vanessa St. James stood in the doorway, a hesitant smile playing on her lips. Time had been kind to her. Her dark skin glowed with health, and her eyes still held that mischievous spark that had first drawn Matthew to her all those years ago. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important," Vanessa said, stepping into the office. "I saw the light on and thought I'd take a chance." Matthew stood, his mind reeling. No, you're not interrupting. Please, have a seat. What brings you here after all this time?" As Vanessa settled into the chair across from his desk, Matthew couldn't help but be transported back to their college days. They had been young, passionate, and deeply in love. Vanessa had been his first serious girlfriend, the woman he had thought he would spend the rest of his life with.
Hold on, y'all. Another commercial.
It's Boss Gob's President's Day Lazy Boy 2-for-1 recliner event. $600 off the Lazy Boy Veil recliner.
But their paths had diverged. Matthew had felt called to the ministry, while Vanessa had pursued a career in law. The breakup had been painful, but amicable, both recognizing that their lives were heading in different directions. "I've moved back to the city," Vanessa explained, her voice pulling Matthew back to the present. "I'm joining a law firm here in Harlem. When I heard you were pastoring this church, I thought I'd stop by and say hello." Matthew nodded, trying to gather his thoughts. "It's good to see you, Vanessa. You look well. How have you been?" As they fell into conversation, catching up on the years that had passed, Matthew felt a strange mix of nostalgia and unease. Vanessa was as charming and intelligent as ever, her laughter filling the office with a warmth he hadn't realized he'd been missing. They talked for hours, reminiscing about old times and sharing stories of their lives since college. Matthew found himself opening up about his struggles with the church board, his vision for community outreach programs, and even his recent doubts about his calling. Vanessa listened attentively, offering insights and encouragement that reminded him why he had fallen for her in the first place. It wasn't until the old clock in the hallway chimed midnight that they realized how much time had passed. "Yes, I should be getting home," he agreed, standing up, perhaps a bit too quickly. It was really good to see you, Vanessa." As they said their goodbyes, Vanessa hesitated at the door. "Matthew, I know it's been a long time, and we've both gone with our lives, but I'd like us to be friends, if that's possible. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime?" Matthew knew he should say no. He knew that entertaining a friendship with his ex-girlfriend, especially given his current suspicions about Monica, was a dangerous path. But looking into Vanessa's hopeful eyes, he found himself nodding. "Sure, coffee sounds nice. Just as friends, of course." Vanessa's smile brightened. "Of course. I'll give you a call next week." As Matthew watched her walk away, he felt a mixture of excitement and dread. The return of Vanessa St. James to his life felt like both a blessing and a complication. Little did he know that this chance encounter would set in motion a series of events that would test his faith, his marriage, and his very identity as a man of God. Driving home that night, Matthew's mind was a tumult of conflicting thoughts and emotions. The joy of reconnecting with Vanessa warred with his lingering suspicions about Monica. As he pulled into his driveway, he made a silent vow to himself. He would get to the bottom of whatever was going on with his wife, and he would navigate this unexpected reunion with Vanessa with wisdom and caution. But as Matthew would soon discover, the heart often has plans of its own, plans that can derail even the most well-intentioned resolutions. The weeks that followed Matthew's reunion with Vanessa were a whirlwind of conflicting emotions and mounting tensions. On the surface, life continued as normal. Matthew led his congregation, counseled his parishioners, and maintained the appearance of a happily married man. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, a storm was brewing. Matthew and Vanessa began meeting for coffee, their encounters always under the guise of old friends catching up. At first, Matthew justified these meetings to himself as harmless nostalgia, a chance to reminisce about simpler times. But with each passing week, he found himself looking forward to these meetings with an eagerness that both thrilled and terrified him. Vanessa was everything Monica wasn't: attentive, engaged, and seemingly fascinated by every word Matthew spoke. She laughed at his jokes, offered insightful comments on his sermons, and seemed to understand his struggles in a way that no one else did. In her presence, Matthew felt seen and appreciated in a way he hadn't in years. Meanwhile, Monica's behavior continued to fuel Matthew's suspicions. She worked longer hours, often coming home well after her shift was supposed to end. Her explanations of emergency cases and understaffed nights at the hospital rang hollow to Matthew's ears. He noticed how she guarded her phone, always keeping it close and angling the screen away from him when texting. One evening, as they sat in tense silence over dinner, Matthew decided to broach the subject. "Monica," he began, his voice carefully neutral, "is everything all right between us?" Monica looked up from her plate, her expression a mix of surprise and wariness. "Of course, honey. Why do you ask?" Matthew took a deep breath, steeling himself. "You've been distant lately, working late, always on your phone. I can't help but feel like there's something you're not telling me." For a moment, something like panic flashed in Monica's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a calm smile. "Matthew, you're imagining things. I've just been busy at work, that's all. You know how demanding the hospital can be."
At Hand and Stone, we make self-care
No, don't.
unforgettable. This Valentine's Day, gift wellness that feels as good as it sounds.
Her denial only served to fuel Matthew's suspicions. He wanted to press further, to demand the truth, but something held him back. Perhaps it was fear of what he might discover, or maybe it was the guilt of his own growing emotional entanglement with Vanessa. As the days wore on, Matthew found himself caught in an increasingly complex web of half-truths and unspoken tensions. He continued to meet Vanessa, each encounter leaving him feeling more alive and more conflicted. At home, the distance between him and Monica grew, their conversations becoming stilted and superficial. It was during this tumultuous time that Matthew received an unexpected visitor at the church, Vanessa's ex-husband, Dr. Julian Foster. The distinguished cardiologist arrived unannounced one afternoon, his presence sending a ripple of unease through Matthew. Reverend Washington, Dr. Foster said, his tone clipped and formal. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Matthew ushered him into
Yes,
his
I need to
office,
know, girl.
curiosity and apprehension warring within him. "Not at all, Dr. Foster. What can I do for you?" The doctor's eyes, sharp and assessing, bore into Matthew. "I'll get straight to the point, Reverend. I've heard that you've been spending a considerable amount of time with my ex-wife, Vanessa." Matthew felt his heart rate quicken. "Vanessa and I are old friends from college. We've been catching up, that's all." Dr. Foster's laugh was devoid of humor. "Catching up, is it? Tell me, Reverend, does your wife know about these little catch-up sessions?" The implication hung heavy in the air between them. Matthew opened his mouth to respond, but Dr. Foster cut him off. "I'm not here to judge you, Reverend. Lord knows Vanessa and I had our issues. But I feel obligated to warn you. Vanessa has a way of complicating things. She's not the woman you knew in college. Be careful." With those cryptic words, Dr. Foster left, leaving Matthew reeling. The encounter served as a stark reminder of the dangerous game he was playing. He was a married man, a respected pastor, yet here he was, entertaining feelings for another woman while suspecting his own wife of infidelity. That night, as Matthew lay awake, the weight of his actions pressing down on him, he made a decision. He would end things with Vanessa, recommit himself to his marriage, and confront Monica once and for all. He would put an end to this dance of deception and secrets. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. For just as Matthew resolved to set things right, events were already in motion that would bring everything crashing down around him in the most public and devastating way possible. The day that would change everything started like any other. Matthew woke early, his mind heavy with the resolution he'd made the night before. He would end things with Vanessa, confront Monica, and try to salvage what was left of his marriage and his integrity. As he went about his morning routine, Matthew rehearsed the conversations in his head. He would be firm but kind with Vanessa, explaining that their rekindled friendship had crossed a line and needed to end. With Monica, he would be open and honest about his suspicions, giving her the chance to come clean about whatever was going on. But as the old saying goes, the best laid plans often go awry. Matthew's first inkling that something was amiss came when he arrived at the church to find several missed calls from Deacon Johnson, the head of the church board. The messages were vague but urgent, insisting that Matthew call back as soon as possible. With a growing sense of unease, Matthew dialed the deacon's number. The conversation that followed sent his world spinning off its axis. "Reverend Washington," Deacon Johnson's voice was grave. "There's been an incident.
Hey,
A video has
Lisa.
been circulating among some members of the congregation. A video involving your wife."
Hey,
Matthew
Mimi.
felt his blood run cold. What kind of video?
Hey,
He asked, though
Denise.
deep down, he already knew
Sorry,
the
y'all. I
answer.
was looking at thumbnails.
The
I didn't even
deacon's
see people
hesitation
coming in.
spoke volumes. "It's intimate in nature, Reverend, and the man in the video, it's not you." The words hit Matthew like a physical blow. Despite his suspicions, despite the distance that had grown
Okay,
between
Lisa.
them, he had never truly believed Monica capable
How
of
you
such a
doing,
betrayal.
Denise?
And now not only was it confirmed, but it was public knowledge, spreading through his congregation like wildfire. "Who?" Matthew managed to choke out. "Who is she with?" Another painful pause. "It appears to be Dr. Julian Foster." The name sent Matthew reeling. Dr. Foster, Vanessa's ex-husband. The very man who had warned him about getting too close to Vanessa. The irony was almost too much to bear. As the full implications of the situation began to sink in, Matthew felt a maelstrom of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Anger, hurt, betrayal, and shame warred within him. His wife had been unfaithful, and with the ex-husband of the woman he himself had been growing closer to, It was a twist worthy of a soap opera, except this was his life, his ministry, his reputation on the line. Reverend, Deacon Johnson's voice cut through Matthew's tumultuous thoughts. The board is calling an emergency meeting. We need to discuss how to handle this situation. In a daze, Matthew made his way to his office, locking the door behind him. He sank into his chair, his head in his hands, trying to make sense of the chaos that had suddenly engulfed his life. Questions raced through his mind. How long had this been going on? How many people had seen the video? What would this mean for his marriage, his ministry, his future? As the shock began to wear off, a new emotion began to take hold. A cold, calculated anger. Matthew had always prided himself.
Oh,
his
yeah, I
ability
know
to
about those
forgive,
muscle
to turn
relaxers,
the other
Denise.
cheek.
I know.
It was
I
what he
used to
preached
take
from
them
the pulpit
years
every
ago.
Sunday. But in
Yeah,
this moment, faced with such a
I know
public and
about them.
humiliating betrayal, forgiveness seemed like a distant, impossible concept. Instead, Matthew found himself consumed by thoughts of revenge. Not just against Monica and Dr. Foster, but against a world that seemed determined to make a mockery of his faith and his principles. He had tried to do everything right, to be a good husband, a devoted pastor, a pillar of the community. And this was how he was repaid? As he sat there wrestling with his darkest impulses, Matthew's eyes fell on his computer. An idea began to form, a terrible, destructive idea that went against everything he had ever believed in. But in that moment, blinded by pain and rage, it seemed like the only way to reclaim some semblance of control over his shattered life. With trembling hands, Matthew reached for his phone. He had a call to make, to Vanessa. If he was going to go down this dark path, he wouldn't do it alone. And who better to understand his pain, his desire for retribution, than the woman who had been similarly betrayed? As he dialed the number, Matthew knew he was standing on the precipice of a decision that would change everything. But in that moment, consumed by hurt and anger, he was beyond caring about the consequences. All he wanted was for those who had wronged him to feel the same pain, the same public humiliation that he was experiencing. Little did Matthew know that his actions in the coming hours would set in motion a chain of events that would not only destroy his marriage and his career, but would shake the entire community to its core. The stage was set for a scandal of biblical proportions, and Matthew Washington, once a beacon of faith and morality, was about to become its central figure. The next few hours passed in a blur for Matthew. His conversation with Vanessa had been brief, but intense. She had been shocked by the news of Monica's infidelity with Julian, her own ex-husband. The betrayal cut deep for both of them, creating a twisted bond of shared pain and anger. "What are you going to do?" Vanessa had asked, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. Matthew's response had been cold, calculated. "I'm going to make them feel what we're feeling. The shame, the humiliation, all of it." There had been a pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, Matthew thought Vanessa might try to talk him out of it. Instead, her voice came back, steel-edged and determined. "Tell me what you need me to do." And so the conspiracy was born. Matthew and Vanessa, once young lovers reunited by chance, now found themselves united in a dark purpose. They spent the next few hours planning, their shared desire for vengeance overriding any moral qualms they might have had. Vanessa proved to be a willing and capable accomplice. She used her legal connections to ensure that their plan wouldn't result in any criminal charges. She also took charge of the technical aspects, ensuring that the video would play flawlessly when the time came. As evening approached, Matthew found himself standing alone in the empty sanctuary, staring up at the cross that hung above the altar. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. Was he really prepared to go through with this? To use the house of God as a stage for his revenge? But then the image of Monica and Julian together flashed through his mind, and his resolve hardened once more. He had given everything to this church, to his marriage, to his faith, and this was how he was repaid? No, there would be no last-minute change of heart, no 11th-hour forgiveness. They would reap what they had sown. The hours ticked by, and soon it was Sunday morning. The church began to fill with parishioners, many of whom cast furtive glances at Matthew as he greeted them at the door. He could see the questions in their eyes, the mix of sympathy and morbid curiosity. Little did they know that they were about to become unwitting participants in a drama that would shake their community to its core. As Matthew took his place behind the pulpit, he scanned the congregation. Monica sat in her usual spot in the front row, her face a mask of composure, but Matthew could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands twisted nervously in her lap. She knew that he knew, but she had no idea of the public reckoning that was about to unfold. In the back of the church, Vanessa slipped in quietly, nodding almost imperceptibly to Matthew. Everything was in place. There was no turning back now. Matthew began his sermon as he always did, with a passage from Scripture. But today, his words carried a double meaning, laden with the weight of his impending revelation. Today, he intoned, his voice ringing out across the hushed sanctuary, we will talk about truth, about how the truth, no matter how painful, how shocking, must always come to light. As he spoke, Matthew's finger hovered over the remote control hidden behind his Bible. With one press of a button, he would set in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the course of his life and the lives of everyone in this room. For a brief, eternal moment, Matthew hesitated. The faces of his congregation looked up at him, trusting, expectant. They had no idea of the bombshell he was about to drop, the sacred trust he was about to shatter. But then his eyes locked with Monica's, and in that instant, all hesitation vanished. He saw no remorse there, no guilt, only a wary defensiveness that stoked the fires of his anger anew. Without further pause, Matthew pressed the button. The large screen behind him, usually used for hymn lyrics and Bible verses, flickered to life. And there, in full, high-definition clarity, was the video that had torn his world apart. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Gasps of shock rippled through the congregation. Some turned away, unable to watch. Others stared, transfixed by the unfolding scandal.
Wow.
Monica, her face a mask of horror, leapt to her feet, her cry of no lost in the growing tumult. As the video played on, Matthew stood at the pulpit, his face set in grim satisfaction. This was his moment of triumph, his revenge made manifest. Let them all see the truth, he thought. Let them judge. But even as the chaos unfolded before him, a small voice in the back of Matthew's mind whispered a warning. This was a line crossed, a point of no return. In his quest for vengeance, he had weaponized his pulpit, turned his congregation into unwilling voyeurs, and shattered the sanctity of his church. As the screen went dark and the uproar reached a fever pitch, Matthew realized that his act of revenge had not brought him the satisfaction he had craved. Instead, he felt hollow, drained. In exposing Monica's sin, he had revealed his own moral bankruptcy. The scandal he had unleashed would indeed rock the community to its core. But as Matthew stood there, facing the shocked and angry faces of his congregation, he began to understand that the person it would destroy most thoroughly was himself. The fallout from Matthew's shocking revelation was immediate and far-reaching. The sanctuary, once a place of peace and worship, had been transformed into a scene of chaos and confusion. Shouts of anger and disbelief filled the air as parishioners struggled to process what they had just witnessed. Monica, her face a mask of shame and fury, stormed out of the church, pushing past those who tried to stop her. Dr. Julian Foster, who had been sitting quietly in the back, slipped out amidst the confusion, his reputation in tatters. Matthew stood at the pulpit, watching the pandemonium unfold. The initial rush of vindication he had felt was quickly giving way to a creeping sense of horror. What had he done? In his quest for revenge, he had not only exposed his wife's infidelity, but had also revealed the depths of his own moral failings. Deacon Johnson was the first to reach him, his face a mix of shock and disappointment. Reverend Washington, he said, his voice barely audible above the din, I think it's best if you step down from the pulpit now. As Matthew was led away, he caught sight of Vanessa in the crowd. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and he saw in her expression a mirror of his own dawning realization. They had gone too far, crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The next few days passed in a blur of emergency meetings, angry phone calls, and media frenzy. The story of the pastor who had exposed his wife's affair during a Sunday service spread like wildfire, making headlines in local papers and trending on social media. Monica, for her part, moved out of their home the same day, taking refuge with her sister. Through her lawyer, she made it clear that she would be filing for divorce, citing Matthew's public humiliation as grounds for a fault-based dissolution of their marriage. As for Dr. Julian Foster, the scandal cost him his position at the hospital. The board of directors, concerned about the negative publicity, asked for his resignation. His medical license came under review, his reputation in the community irreparably damaged.
Wow, he
Vanessa,
did all that
realizing
and
the
hurt
magnitude
himself.
of what they had done, distanced herself from Matthew. She had been a willing accomplice in his plan for revenge, but now, faced with the consequences, she retreated, leaving Matthew to face the fallout alone. In the weeks that followed, Matthew found himself isolated and adrift. The church that had been his home for 2 decades was now closed to him. Friends and colleagues avoided him, unsure of how to react to his spectacular fall from grace. He was a pariah in the very community he had once led. As the dust began to settle, Matthew was forced to confront the full impact of his actions. He had not only destroyed his marriage and his career, but had also shaken the faith of an entire congregation. In his moment of anger and hurt, he had betrayed everything he had ever stood for. 1 month after that fateful
Wow.
Sunday, Matthew sat alone in his empty house, surrounded by boxes of his belongings. He had been asked to vacate the church-owned property, another stark reminder of all he had lost. As he leafed through an old photo album, memories of happier times with Monica bringing a lump to his throat, there was a knock at the door. To his surprise, it was Deacon Johnson. The older man's face was grave as he stepped into the house. "Matthew," he said, dispensing with formalities, "I hope you understand why I'm here." Matthew nodded, bracing himself for more recriminations, but what the deacon said next caught him off guard. "What you did was wrong. There's no question about that. But I've known you for a long time, Matthew. I know you're a good man at heart, even if you lost your way for a while there." The deacon's words, tinged with disappointment but not devoid of compassion, broke something in Matthew. For the first time since that Sunday, he allowed himself to truly feel the weight of his actions. Tears began to fall as the full realization of what he had done washed over him. "I'm so sorry," he choked out. "I don't know what came over me. I was hurt, angry, but that's no excuse. I've ruined everything." Deacon Johnson placed a hand on Matthew's shoulder. "Yes, you have, but that doesn't mean your story has to end here. You've fallen, Matthew, fallen hard. But now you have a choice to make. Will you stay down, or will you find a way to get back up?" As the deacon's words sank in, Matthew felt a glimmer of something he hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. It was small, fragile, but it was there. He realized that while he couldn't undo the damage he had caused, he could choose how to move forward from this point. The months following the scandal were the darkest of Matthew Washington's life. The man who had once commanded respect from the pulpit now found himself shunned by the very community he had served for so long. The weight of his actions pressed down on him, a constant reminder of how far he had fallen. Matthew's days were spent in a small, rented apartment on the outskirts of Harlem, a far cry from the comfortable parsonage he had once called home. He struggled to find work, his notoriety following him like a shadow. Even menial jobs were hard to come by, as potential employers recognized him from the news reports that had plastered his face across the city. Nights were the hardest. In the quiet darkness, Matthew was left alone with his thoughts, replaying the events that had led to his downfall. The look of betrayal on Monica's face, the shocked gasps of his congregation, the disappointment in Deacon Johnson's eyes, these images haunted his dreams, robbing him of peace. It was during one of these sleepless nights, nearly 6 months after the incident, that Matthew reached his lowest point. Staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, he barely recognized the man looking back at him. Gone was the confident, charismatic preacher. In his place stood a broken man, his eyes hollow with despair. For a brief, terrifying moment, Matthew considered ending it all. The shame, the isolation, the overwhelming sense of failure, it seemed too much to bear. But as he stood on the precipice of this dark thought, a memory surfaced. It was Deacon Johnson's words from that day in his old house. "You've fallen, Matthew, fallen hard, but now you have a choice to make. Will you stay down, or will you find a way to get back up?" At that moment, Matthew made a decision. He would get back up. It wouldn't be easy, and he knew he had a long way to go to make amends, but he would try. He owed it to himself, to those he had hurt, and to the faith he had once preached so passionately about. 1 year after the scandal, Matthew took another gestures of understanding, while far from absolution, gave Matthew hope. They showed him that even in the wake of terrible mistakes, there was still the possibility of growth and change. As his second year of exile from his former life drew to a close, Matthew faced perhaps his greatest challenge yet. He was invited to speak at a conference on ethics and believers, organized by a coalition of local churches. The invitation had come through a contact at the community center who had witnessed Matthew's quiet efforts to rebuild his life. Standing at the podium, facing an audience that included some familiar faces from his past, Matthew felt the full weight of his journey. His hands trembled as he gripped the edges of the lectern, but his voice was steady as he began to speak. 2 years ago, I stood before a congregation and committed an act of profound betrayal, he began. I used my position of trust to seek revenge, to inflict pain, to satisfy my own anger.
That's why you where
In
you at
doing
right
so,
now.
I not only betrayed my wife and my congregation, but I betrayed everything I claimed to believe in. As Matthew continued his speech, he didn't make excuses for his actions. Instead, he spoke honestly about his fall from grace, the dark night of the soul that followed, and the ongoing struggle to redeem himself. He talked about the nature of forgiveness, not as something owed to him, but as a gift he hoped to one day be worthy of receiving. I stand before you today, not as a man redeemed, but as a man still on the journey towards believers, he concluded. I don't know if I'll ever fully atone for the hurt I've caused, but I promise to spend the rest of my life trying. The silence that followed his speech was deafening. For a long moment, Matthew stood there, vulnerable and exposed, waiting for the judgment he felt he deserved. Then, slowly, hesitantly, someone began to clap. Others joined in, the applause building until it filled the room. As Matthew stepped down from the podium, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time, a glimmer of hope. He knew that this moment didn't erase the past. His relationship with Monica was irreparably broken. His career as a pastor was over, and many in his former congregation would never trust him again. But for the first time in 2 years, he felt that perhaps there was a future for him after all.
Hi, I'm Margaret, and I say.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, you messed up your life, buddy.
Always a worse set of
Hold
facts.
on, y'all. I'm trying to get this off.
Well, that day has come.
Okay. Yeah, you messed your whole life up, baby. Messed up your whole life. Sorry. Got to get your life together. I don't know why.
The wail of sirens pierced the humid Atlanta night, a sound all too familiar to the residents of the Westview neighborhood. But this time was different. This time, the sirens weren't racing towards danger. They were converging on one of their own. Officer Peter Carter stood motionless in the doorway of his modest ranch-style home, his service weapon dangling limply from his right hand. The flashing blue and red lights painted his face in an eerie alternating glow, highlighting the shock etched into his features. Behind him, sprawled on the living room floor, lay the body of his wife, Janet. Her pregnant belly formed a cruel silhouette in the dim light filtering through the curtains. As fellow officers swarmed the scene, their faces a mix of disbelief and horror, Detective Alicia Freeman pushed through the crowd. Her eyes locked with Peter's, and in that moment, she saw something that chilled her to the core. It wasn't just shock or grief in those eyes. There was a cold, calculating gleam that spoke of a man who had crossed a line from which there was no return. "Peter," she said softly, her hand hovering near her holster, "what happened here?" His response, barely a whisper, would haunt her for years to come. "I had to do it, Alicia. She was carrying his child. My partner's child." And with those words, the true nightmare began. A tale of love, betrayal, and a thin blue line stained crimson. The Atlanta Police Department's annual summer barbecue was in full swing at Grant Park. The air was thick with the scent of grilled meats and the sound of laughter. Children darted between the legs of off-duty officers, their shrieks of joy punctuating the lazy afternoon. Near the center of the festivities stood Peter and Janet Carter, the golden couple of the APD's 5th Precinct. Peter, tall and broad-shouldered, cut an imposing figure in his civilian clothes. His arm was draped protectively around Janet's waist, her petite frame fitting perfectly against his side. Her radiant smile, the way she looked up at her husband, spoke volumes about their relationship. "I swear, Janet," Detective Alicia Freeman said, approaching the couple with a paper plate loaded with food, "you two make the rest of us look bad. What's your secret?" Janet laughed, a melodious sound that turned heads. "No secret, Alicia. Just found myself a good man and made sure to keep him in line." Peter grinned, planting a kiss on his wife's forehead. "More like she's got me wrapped around her little finger, and I wouldn't have it any other way." As they chatted, Officer Devin Jackson approached, 2 cold beers in hand. He offered one to Peter, who accepted with a nod of thanks. "Janet, you're looking radiant as ever," Devin said, his smile warm, but his eyes lingering a fraction too long on Peter's wife. If Peter noticed, he gave no sign. "Watch it, partner," he joked, "or I might have to remind you why I'm the better shot on the range." Devin raised his hands in mock surrender. "No contest there, brother. You're the best we've got." The easy camaraderie between the two men was evident, a bond forged through countless hours of patrolling Atlanta's streets together. They were more than partners. They were brothers in blue, trusting each other with their lives every day. As the afternoon wore on, Alicia found herself observing the trio. There was something in the way Devin looked at Janet when he thought no one was watching, a longing that seemed out of place. And Janet, for her part, seemed to unconsciously gravitate towards Devin whenever Peter was distracted. It was subtle, probably imperceptible to most, but Alicia hadn't become a detective by ignoring her instincts. Something was simmering beneath the surface of this picture-perfect scene, and she couldn't shake the feeling that it was only a matter of time before it boiled over. Later, as the sun began to set and families started to pack up, Alicia overheard a snippet of conversation between Peter and Janet. "Doctor's appointment tomorrow," Janet was saying, her voice low and excited. "Maybe this time we'll have good news." Peter's response was equally hushed, but the hope in his voice was unmistakable. "I've got a good feeling about this, baby. This could be our time." Alicia's heart went out to them. It was common knowledge among their friends that Peter and Janet had been trying to start a family for years with no success. The longing for a child had become a shadow that sometimes dimmed the light in Janet's eyes, though she always tried to hide it behind her brilliant smile. As Alicia watched the couple walk away, hand in hand, she couldn't help but wonder about the complex web of relationships she'd observed that day. Peter and Janet, the perfect couple with a hidden struggle. Devin, the loyal partner with secrets in his eyes, and herself, the observer, always on the outside looking in. Little did she know that in 6 short months, this tapestry of lives would be torn apart in the most brutal way imaginable, leaving her to pick up the pieces and uncover the truth hidden behind the facade of perfection. The 5th Precinct buzzed with its usual morning energy. Officers shuffled in for the day shift, the aroma of cheap coffee permeating the air. At his desk, Peter Carter stared at his computer screen, his brow furrowed in concentration. He barely noticed when his partner, Devin Jackson, plopped into the chair beside him. "Earth to Peter," Devin said, waving a hand in front of his face. "Are you planning on joining us mere mortals anytime soon?" Peter blinked, coming back to the present. "Sorry, man. Just got a lot on my mind." Devin's expression softened. "Everything okay with you and Janet?" A shadow passed over Peter's face. Yeah, we're good. It's just... He hesitated, then shook his head. It's nothing. What have we got today? Devon didn't push, but concern lingered in his eyes. Captain wants us to follow up on that string of B&Es in Adair Park. I think it might be connected to the drug trade we've been tracking. As they gathered their gear and headed for the patrol car, Detective Alicia Freeman watched from across the room. The tension between the partners was palpable, a stark contrast to their usual easy rapport. Something had shifted, and Alicia's detective instincts were on high alert. Out on patrol, the silence in the car was broken only by the crackle of the police radio. Peter's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched. Finally, Devon spoke. Look, man, I know something's eating at you. We've been partners for 3 years. You can talk to me. Peter was quiet for so long that Devon thought he might not respond. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, Janet's pregnant. Devon's face lit up. That's amazing news. Congrats, brother. I know how long you two have been trying. But Peter's expression remained grim. Yeah, it should be great news. Except, he swallowed hard. Except the doctor says I can't have kids. My swimmers don't
Sound
swim
like he
the
didn't
way
want
I
no
do.
kids, and sound like
The
he was trying to say
implications
the
of his
kids,
words hung
the baby
heavy on
wasn't
the air.
his.
Devon's smile faded, replaced by a look of shock and something else. Guilt? Peter, I don't know what to say. Have you talked to Janet about this? Peter shook his head. Not yet. I don't know how. She was so happy when she told me about the pregnancy. I couldn't bear to see that joy turn to what? Shame? Fear? He gripped the steering wheel tighter. I keep thinking, maybe the doctor made a mistake. Maybe it's a miracle. But deep down, I know. I know someone else is the father of my wife's baby. Devon
Wow.
remained silent, his face a
That's
mask of
sad
conflicting emotions.
that you
Peter
don't want
didn't
to claim
notice,
your own
lost in his own
child.
turmoil. I should be happy, right? Peter continued, his voice cracking.
Of course.
We're finally going to have a baby. Isn't that what matters? But every time I look at her, all I can think is, who? Who betrayed me? Who's been with my wife? Devon opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, the radio crackled to life. All units, we have a 1031 in progress at 1123 Westview Drive. Any units in the vicinity, please respond. Peter flipped on the siren, grateful for the distraction. That's our cue, partner. Let's go be cops. As they sped towards the scene, Devon cast a worried glance at his partner. The man beside him was a powder keg waiting to explode, and Devon knew he was holding the match. Back at the precinct, Alicia was piecing together a different puzzle. She'd noticed Janet Carter visiting the station more frequently over the past few weeks, always timing her visits for when Peter was out on patrol. Today was no exception. Janet walked in, her pregnancy now visible beneath her flowing top. Her eyes scanned the room, not landing on Alicia until the detective deliberately stepped into her path. Janet, what a surprise, Alicia said, her tone friendly but her eyes sharp. Peter's out on a call right now. Can I help you with something? Janet's smile faltered for a moment before she recovered. Oh no, that's okay. I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by. I'll catch him later. As Janet turned to leave, Alicia noticed her slip a small envelope into Devon's empty desk drawer. The action was quick, almost imperceptible, but it didn't escape Alicia's trained eye. Janet, Alicia called out, causing the other woman to freeze. How about a cup of tea? It's been a while since we caught up. Janet hesitated, then nodded, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. As they settled into the break room, Alicia couldn't help but feel she was watching the fuse of a bomb slowly burn down. The only question was, who would be caught in the blast when it finally detonated? The Atlanta summer was in full swing, the heat oppressive and unrelenting. But inside the 5th precinct, a different kind of pressure was building. Peter Carter sat at his desk, staring at a grainy printout of a sonogram. His son, or at least the son he was supposed to claim as his own. The image that should have filled him with joy now only fueled the rage simmering just beneath the surface. Across the room, Devon Jackson was engrossed in paperwork, studiously avoiding his partner's gaze. The easy camaraderie that had once defined their relationship had evaporated, replaced by a tense silence that seemed to grow thicker with each passing day. Detective Alicia Freeman watched the scene unfold from her office, her cop instincts screaming that something was about to break. She'd been piecing together the puzzle for weeks now, and the picture it revealed was ugly. The frequent visits from Janet, always when Peter was out, the hushed conversations between Janet and Devon in corners of the precinct, the growing distance between the partners. It all pointed to one devastating conclusion. Alicia's musings were interrupted by a commotion near the front desk. Janet had arrived, her pregnant belly now prominently displayed. But instead of her usual quiet entrance, she was engaged in a heated argument with the desk sergeant. "I need to see him now," Janet's voice carried across the bullpen. "It's urgent." Peter's head snapped up at the sound of his wife's voice. For a moment, concern flashed across his face, quickly replaced by a hardness that Alicia had never seen before. As Peter strode towards the front desk, Alicia noticed Devon tense, his hand unconsciously moving towards his service weapon. The gesture was subtle, but it spoke volumes. "Janet," Peter's voice was controlled, but there was an edge to it that made everyone in earshot pause. "What's going on? Is something wrong with the baby?" Janet's eyes darted between Peter and Devon, fear evident in her expression. "Peter, we need to talk. In private, please." The silence that fell over the precinct was deafening. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath, waiting for Peter's response. After what felt like an eternity, Peter nodded curtly. "Fine, interview room 2, now." As the couple disappeared into the small room, Alicia made a decision. She quietly approached the observation room next door, ignoring the questioning looks from her colleagues. This was a powder keg about to explode, and she needed to be ready for the fallout. Through the one-way glass, Alicia watched as Peter and Janet faced each other. The tension between them was palpable, even from a distance. "Peter, I can't do this anymore," Janet began, her voice trembling. "The lies, the guilt, it's eating me alive." Peter's face remained impassive, but his fists clenched at his sides. "What lies, Janet? What guilt?" Tears began to stream down Janet's face. "The baby? It's not. I mean, you're not? Not the father?" Peter finished for her, his voice dangerously calm. "Yeah, I know. I've known for a while now." Janet's eyes widened in shock. "You knew? But how? Does it matter?" Peter's control was slipping, anger seeping into his
Oh,
words.
so the
"What
baby
matters is that you
is. Oh,
betrayed me.
wow.
You and..." He trailed off, unable to say the name. "Devon," Janet whispered, confirming what Peter had suspected all along. The name hung in the air between them, a dagger that pierced the last vestiges of their marriage. In the observation room, Alicia felt her heart race. This was it, the moment of truth. She silently prayed that Peter's training, his oath to serve and protect, would overcome the rage she could see building in his eyes. "How long?" Peter's voice was barely audible. Janet's response was equally quiet. 6 months. It just happened. We never meant to." "Don't!" Peter's shout made both Janet and Alicia jump. "Don't you dare say you didn't mean for it to happen. You made a choice. Both of you." Janet reached out, trying to touch Peter's arm. He recoiled as if her touch burned. "Peter, please, we can work through this. For the baby's sake, if nothing else." For a moment, something softened in Peter's expression. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone, replaced by a cold determination that sent a chill down Alicia's spine. "There's nothing to work through," Peter said, his voice devoid of emotion. "We're done. You, me, Devon. It's all over." With that, he turned and strode out of the interview room, leaving a sobbing Janet behind. Alicia quickly exited the observation room, her mind racing. She needed to contain this situation before it spiraled out of control. But as she stepped into the bullpen, she realized she was too late. Peter was standing in front of Devon's desk, his partner rising slowly to face him. The entire precinct had gone silent, all eyes on the two men who had once been as close as brothers. "Peter," Devon began, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but we need to talk about this like rational." He never finished the sentence. Peter's fist connected with Devon's jaw with a sickening crack, sending him sprawling across his desk. Chaos erupted in the precinct. Officers rushed to separate the two men, but not before Peter landed several more punches. It took 3 officers to finally pull him off his former partner. As they dragged Peter away, his eyes locked with Alicia's. In that moment, she saw something that chilled her to her core. It wasn't just anger or betrayal in those eyes. It was a promise of retribution, a glimpse of a man pushed beyond his limits. Alicia knew, with a certainty that made her blood run cold, that this was far from over. The real tragedy was yet to come, and she feared that by the time it was all said and done, there would be no winners, only survivors left to pick up the pieces of shattered lives and broken trust. The Atlanta Police Department's 5th Precinct was a pressure cooker of tension and whispered conversations. The altercation between Peter Carter and Devin Jackson had sent shockwaves through the entire force, leaving a wake of unease and divided loyalties. Peter had been placed on administrative leave, pending an internal investigation. Devin, sporting a bruised jaw and a haunted look in his eyes, had been reassigned to desk duty. The partners who had once been the pride of the precinct were now cautionary tales, their fall from grace a sobering reminder of how quickly things could unravel. Detective Alicia Freeman sat at her desk, poring over case files that had nothing to do with the drama unfolding around her. But her mind wasn't on the petty thefts and drug busts detailed in the reports. Instead, she found herself constantly drawn back to the events of the past few months, trying to pinpoint where it all went wrong. A knock on her office door jolted her from her thoughts. Looking up, she saw Captain Elijah Booker, his face etched with lines of worry. "Got a minute, Freeman?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. Alicia nodded, gesturing for him to take a seat. "What's on your mind, Captain?" Booker closed the door behind him before settling into the chair across from her desk. "I need your read on this Carter Jackson situation. You've always had good instincts, and right now, I need someone I can trust to give it to me straight." Alicia leaned back in her chair, choosing her words carefully. "It's a powder keg, sir. Peter's been pushed to his breaking point, and I'm worried about what he might do next. Devin's racked with guilt, but also fear. And Janet, she's caught in the middle of it all, pregnant and terrified." Booker nodded grimly. "That's what I was afraid of. Any recommendations?" "Keep them separated," Alicia said without hesitation. "Extend Peter's leave, transfer Devin to another precinct if possible, and assign a protective detail to Janet. She might not want it, but I have a bad feeling she's going to need it." The captain raised an eyebrow. "You really think it could come to that? Carter's one of our best." Alicia met his gaze steadily. "That's what worries me, sir. He knows our procedures, our blind spots. If he decides to do something extreme, he'll know exactly how to cover his tracks." Booker was silent for a long moment, the weight of the situation evident in the slump of his shoulders. Finally, he stood. "All right, Freeman. I'll take your recommendations under advisement. In the meantime, keep your ear to the ground. If you hear anything, and I mean anything, that suggests this might escalate, I want to know immediately." As the captain left her office, Alicia felt a knot form in the pit of her stomach. She'd seen the darkness in Peter's eyes that day in the precinct, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were all standing on the edge of a precipice, about to plummet into an abyss from which there was no return. Across town, in a modest apartment on the outskirts of Atlanta, Janet Carter sat on the edge of her bed, one hand resting on her swollen belly. The room around her was a mess of half-packed boxes and discarded clothes, a visual representation of the chaos her life had become. A soft knock on the bedroom door made her look up. Devin Jackson stood in the doorway, his expression a mix of concern and guilt. "You okay?" he asked softly, though they both knew it was a ridiculous question. Janet attempted a smile, but it came out more like a grimace. "As okay as I can be, I guess. Did you talk to your sergeant about the transfer?" Devin nodded, moving to sit beside her on the bed. "Yeah, it's going through. I'll be starting at the 3rd Precinct next week. It's not ideal, but it's safer," Janet finished for him. "For all of us." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their choices pressing down on them like a physical force. "Have you heard from him?" Devin finally asked, unable to bring himself to say Peter's name. Janet shook her head. "Not since that day at the precinct. It's like he's vanished. I'm not sure if that should make me feel relieved or terrified." Devin reached out, taking her hand in his. "We'll get through this, Janet. I promise. Once things calm down, we can figure out our next steps. Maybe even be a family." The word family hung in the air between them, a dream that now seemed tainted by the circumstances of its creation. Janet wanted to believe in that future, but the guilt and fear that had become her constant companions made it hard to see beyond the present moment. "I hope you're right," she said, squeezing his hand. I really do. As night fell over Atlanta, 3 lives remained in limbo. Alicia, vigilant and wary, unable to shake the feeling of impending doom. Janet and Devin, clinging to a fragile hope for the future while looking over their shoulders for the past they couldn't escape. And somewhere in the shadows, Peter Carter, a man with nothing left to lose and a rage that threatened to consume everything in its path. The stage was set, the players in position. All that remained was for the final act to begin, a tragedy years in the making, born from love, betrayal, and the thin blue line that separated order from chaos. The oppressive heat of the Atlanta summer had given way to an unseasonably cool evening. A light drizzle fell from the overcast sky, casting a gloomy pall over the city. It was as if nature itself sensed the impending tragedy and had dressed accordingly. In a nondescript sedan parked 2 blocks from the Carter residence, Detective Alicia Freeman sipped lukewarm coffee and tried to ignore the cramp developing in her lower back. She'd been on unofficial stakeout duty for the past week, her instincts screaming that something was about to break. Her phone buzzed, startling her from her vigil. It was a text from Captain Booker. Any movement? Alicia typed out a quick response. Nothing yet, but I've got a bad feeling about tonight. She had just hit send when movement caught her eye. A figure in a dark hoodie was making its way down the street, hugging the shadows. Even from a distance, Alicia recognized the purposeful stride of Peter Carter. Shit, she muttered, reaching for her radio. But before she could call it in, Peter had disappeared around the corner towards his old house. Alicia's mind raced. Protocol dictated that she call for backup immediately, but something held her back. If she was wrong, if this was just Peter coming to talk things out with Janet, calling in the cavalry could escalate the situation unnecessarily. Decision made, she quietly exited her car and began to follow Peter's path, her hand resting on the butt of her service weapon. Inside the Carter home, Janet was curled up on the couch, a tattered copy of What to Expect When You're Expecting open on her lap. The house felt cavernous and empty without Peter's presence, a constant reminder of how much her life had changed in just a few short months. A soft knock at the door made her jump.
Popeyes has the wing game on lock for your watch party.
What they was doing is, ooh, Lord, that's too much.
Bone in or boneless,
They should have knew that wasn't right. All
Glancing at the
cheating
clock.
with each other.
How far along are you now? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 7 months, Janet replied, her hand instinctively moving to caress her bump. Peter, is it a boy or a girl? He interrupted, still staring at her midsection. Janet swallowed hard. A boy. I'm having a boy. Peter nodded slowly, as if processing this information. Then, without warning, he let out a bitter laugh that made Janet flinch. A son, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. How fitting. Tell me, Janet, does he look like his father in the ultrasounds? Does he have Devin's nose, his chin? Peter, please, Janet pleaded, tears forming in her eyes. I know you're hurting, but hurting? Peter's voice rose, all pretense of calm evaporating. Hurting doesn't even begin to cover it, Janet. You and Devin, you destroyed everything. Our marriage, our friendship, our future. And for what? A few moments of passion? He began to pace the room, his movements becoming more agitated with each pass. Janet watched him warily, her heart pounding in her chest. I loved you, Peter continued, his voice cracking. I would have done anything for you. And this is how you repay me? Sleeping with my partner? By carrying his child? It wasn't like that, Janet protested weakly. We never meant to hurt you. It just happened. Peter whirled on her, his eyes blazing. Things like that don't just happen, Janet. You made a choice. Both of you. You chose to betray me, to make a fool of me in front of everyone we know. He took a step towards her, and Janet instinctively backed away. Peter, you're scaring me. Maybe we should continue this another time, when you're calmer. But Peter wasn't listening. His hand went to his waistband, and Janet's blood ran cold as she saw the glint of his service weapon. I've thought about this moment for months, Peter said, his voice eerily calm as he raised the gun. Imagine every possible scenario. But now that I'm here, now that I see you carrying his child, I realize there's only one way this can end. Janet's hands flew up in a defensive gesture, tears streaming down her face. Peter, please, think about what you're doing. This isn't you. You're a good man, a protector. Don't throw your life away because of a mistake we made. For a moment, something flickered in Peter's eyes, a hint of the man he used to be, struggling against the monster he had become. But then his expression hardened, resolve replacing doubt. You're right, Janet. I am a protector, and I'm going to protect what's left of my dignity, my honor, even if it costs me everything. As Peter's finger tightened on the trigger, time seemed to slow down. Janet saw her life flash before her eyes. Her childhood, her wedding day, the moment she realized she was pregnant. And in that instant, she understood with perfect clarity that she was about to die, that her unborn son would never take his first breath. The crack of the gunshot was deafening in the confined space of the living room. Janet waited for the pain, for the darkness to overtake her. But instead, she heard a grunt and the thud of a body hitting the floor. Opening eyes she hadn't realized she'd closed, Janet saw Peter sprawled on the ground, blood seeping from a wound in his shoulder. And there, in the doorway, stood Detective Alicia Freeman, her gun still raised and smoking. "Are you okay?" Alicia asked urgently, her eyes never leaving Peter's prone form. Janet nodded numbly, her legs giving out as the adrenaline left her system. She sank to the floor, sobs racking her body as the full weight of what had almost happened crashed over her. Alicia quickly secured Peter's weapon and called for backup and an ambulance. As sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer with each passing second, she knelt beside Janet, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's over," she said softly. "You're safe now. Both of you."
12영상이라고 들어보셨습니까?
This is sad. And they both was wrong and nasty.
As blue and red lights began to flash through the windows, another was just beginning. What that new chapter would hold, only time would tell. The 5th Precinct buzzed with subdued activity, a far cry from its usual bustling energy. The events of the past week had cast a pall over the entire department, leaving officers and staff alike grappling with the fallout of Peter Carter's actions. Detective Alicia Freeman sat in Captain Booker's office, her posture rigid as she delivered her report. The captain listened intently, his face a mask of professional neutrality, but the deep furrows in his brow betrayed his inner turmoil. "And that's when I made the decision to enter the premises," Alicia concluded. "Given Carter's state of mind and the immediate threat to Janet's life, I felt I had no choice but to use lethal force." Booker nodded slowly, processing the information. "You made the right call, Freeman. Internal Affairs has already cleared you of any wrongdoing. If you hadn't been there..." He left the sentence unfinished, but they both knew how it would have ended. If Alicia hadn't followed her instincts, if she had waited for backup, Janet Carter and her unborn child would likely be dead. "How's Carter doing?" Alicia asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Booker sighed heavily. "He's stable. The bullet didn't hit anything vital. Physically, he'll make a full recovery. Mentally, that's another story. He's under psychiatric evaluation at Grady Memorial. Once he's cleared medically, he'll be transferred to county jail to await trial." Alicia nodded, a mix of emotions churning in her gut. Peter Carter had been a good cop, a friend even. To see him fall so far, to become the very thing they had sworn to protect against, was a bitter pill to swallow. "And Janet?" she asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Booker's expression softened slightly. "She's staying with her sister for now. The department has arranged for counseling and protection. Devin Jackson has been placed on extended leave and ordered to stay away from her for the time being." Alicia leaned back in her chair, feeling the weight of the past week settle on her shoulders. "What a mess," she murmured, more to herself than to the captain. Booker nodded in agreement. "That it is, Freeman. But now comes the hard part. We've got a department to hold together, a community's trust to rebuild. This incident has shaken faith in the force, and it's on us to restore it." As Alicia left the captain's office, she couldn't help but reflect on how quickly life could change. A month ago, Peter and Janet had been the golden couple, Devin a respected officer. Now their lives were in shambles, and the ripple effects were touching everyone around them. Across town, in a modest suburban home, Janet Carter sat on her sister's couch, absently rubbing her swollen belly.
It is no coincidence that fate brought us together.
The Brutalist is a monument of movie making that reaches for the sky.
The TV droned on
I'm
in the
getting off
background,
after
but
this
she
one.
wasn't really watching.
Yeah.
Entered the room. The detective's face was a mask of professional concern, but Janet could see the fatigue lurking behind her eyes. "How are you holding up?" Alicia asked, taking a seat across from Janet. "I'm surviving," Janet replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "It still doesn't feel real, you know? Like I'm gonna wake up and find out it was all a terrible dream." Alicia nodded sympathetically. "I can't imagine what you're going through, but I want you to know that you're not alone in this. The department is here to support you, whatever you need." Janet managed a weak smile. "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been there that night." "I'm just glad I followed my instincts," Alicia said. She hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Janet, I know this is difficult, but I need to ask, have you heard from Devon?" Janet's hand instinctively went to her belly, a protective gesture. "No," she said, shaking her head. Not since that night. I think he's afraid to reach out, afraid of making things worse." Alicia nodded, making a mental note. "That's probably for the best, at least for now. The situation is complicated, legally speaking. It's better if you both keep your distance until things settle down." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Finally, Janet spoke, her voice trembling. "What happens now, Detective? Where do we go from here?" Alicia leaned forward, her eyes meeting Janet's. "Now, you focus on taking care of yourself and your baby. Let the department handle Peter and the legal proceedings. Your job is to heal, to prepare for the new life you're bringing into this world." As Alicia stood to leave, Janet caught her hand. "Thank you," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "For everything." Alicia squeezed her hand gently. "You're stronger than you know, Janet. You'll get through this. And when that little boy of yours arrives, he's going to have one hell of a mother." As Alicia walked back to her car, she couldn't shake the feeling that this case would stay with her for a long time. The thin blue line that separated order from chaos had been crossed, and the aftermath would ripple through the department and the community for years to come. But as she drove back to the precinct, Alicia found herself thinking not of the tragedy, but of the resilience she had seen in Janet's eyes. Life would go on. Wounds would heal, and out of the ashes of betrayal and violence, new beginnings would emerge. The sun was setting over Atlanta as Alicia pulled into the precinct parking lot. Another day was ending, but the work was far from over. There were reports to file, cases to close, and a city to protect. The badge on her hip felt heavier than ever, a reminder of the responsibility she carried. As she walked into the building, Alicia straightened her shoulders. The job wasn't always easy, and sometimes the lines between right and wrong blurred. But at the end of the day, she knew why she wore the badge: to protect and serve, to stand between the innocent and those who would do them harm, even when the threat came from within their own ranks. The precinct buzzed with activity, a testament to the resilience of the thin blue line. Life went on, the work continued, and somewhere in the city, a new life was growing, a symbol of hope in the face of tragedy. The future was uncertain, but as long as there were people willing to stand up for what was right, there was always hope. Alicia sat down at her desk, pulled out a fresh report form, and began to write. The story of Peter, Janet, and Devon was over, but the lessons learned would echo through the department for years to come. And in those echoes perhaps lay the seeds of change, of growth, of a better future for all. The Atlanta sun shone brightly on a crisp autumn morning as Detective Alicia Freeman climbed the steps of the courthouse. The air was charged with anticipation. Today was the day of Peter Carter's sentencing. As she entered the courtroom, Alicia's eyes swept the room, taking in the familiar faces. Captain Booker sat in the front row, his face a mask of professional stoicism. A few rows back, she spotted Devon Jackson, looking haggard and years older than his actual age. And there, near the back, was Janet, a sleeping infant, cradled in her arms. The proceedings moved quickly. Peter, dressed in an ill-fitting suit, stood impassively as the judge delivered his sentence. 15 years for attempted murder, with the
Wow.
possibility of parole after 10. As the gavel
Wow.
fell, Alicia
Was
couldn't
that
help but
worth
feel a
it?
mix of sadness and relief.
See what
The
anger
man
can
being led
do?
away in
Oh,
handcuffs
shoot.
bore little resemblance to the dedicated officer she had once known. After the courtroom cleared, Alicia found herself face to face with Janet and her son. The baby, just 2 months old, had Janet's eyes and Devon's chin. "He's beautiful," Alicia said softly. "What's his name?" Janet smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Isaiah," she replied. "It means God is salvation." After everything that happened, it felt right. Alicia nodded, understanding the weight behind the name. "How are you doing?" she asked, her eyes searching Janet's face. "Better," Janet said. "One day at a time, you know? The counseling has helped, and this little guy, he gives me a reason to keep going, to be strong." As they talked, Alicia noticed Devon hovering nearby, uncertainty written across his features. Janet followed her gaze and sighed. "It's complicated," she admitted. "We're trying to figure things out. For Isaiah's sake, if nothing else. But trust, that's going to take time to rebuild." Alicia placed a comforting hand on Janet's shoulder. "You've got time," she said, "and you've got support. Don't forget that." As Alicia left the courthouse, she felt a sense of closure. The case that had consumed so much of her life for the past year was finally over. Justice, perfect as it might be, had been served. Back at the precinct, she found a letter waiting on her desk. It was from the police commissioner,
Yeah, it was
offering
crazy
her a
because she was
promotion
married to
to
a
lead a
cop, and
new
she
internal
also
affairs unit. The goal,
dated a
to prevent
co-worker. That
tragedies
was,
like the Carter case
I
from
mean,
happening
that was just
again.
negligent on her
As
end.
she read the
to be
letter,
honest.
Alicia felt a renewed sense of purpose. The thin blue line would always exist,
And then, I
separating
mean,
order
I
from
will always
chaos.
be scared
But
because when this man
perhaps
come
with
out of
vigilance
jail,
and compassion,
she has
they could
to
make
still
that
always look
line a
over her
little
shoulder
stronger, a little more resilient.
to see if he'll ever
Outside her
find her.
window, Atlanta bustled
You
with
know,
life.
so I
Somewhere out
mean, I
there,
just want to be
Janet
right
was
after that.
starting a new chapter with baby Isaiah. Devon was grappling with the consequences of his actions and trying to be a father. And Peter was facing the long road of redemption behind bars. Their stories had become intertwined with hers, a complex tapestry of love, betrayal, and consequences. But out of that tapestry, Alicia realized had come valuable lessons about trust, about the weight of the badge, and about the resilience of the human spirit. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the city, Alicia picked up her pen and began to write her acceptance letter.
Trust me, she's
The
never
work
going to be
ahead would be
right.
challenging,
She's
but she
not.
was ready. For in the
I
end,
always have
it wasn't
thoughts
about the
about that.
thin blue line at all. It was about the people, flawed, complex, and ultimately human, who stood on either side of it. And as long as there were people willing to stand up, to protect, to serve, and to learn from the past, there was hope for a better tomorrow. In that hope, Alicia knew the true strength of the badge she wore and the city she had sworn to protect.
Having your information freely available on the
Like,
internet makes it easier for anyone to impersonate you
yeah, I
online
mean, she's
and
not
try to
going
find
to,
you in real life.
let
We're
me
gonna get
just
your
be
name,
honest, she's not
age,
going to have a
email,
good
phone.
life. That's just my opinion. I feel like she's always going to be in fear. Because this man got to come home one day. You know what I'm saying? He don't, hold on. He don't have a lot of time, so she's going to come home one day, and they got to let her know when he's released. Okay, so what I would say to her if I was a woman like did some shit like that, you got time to be getting your stuff together and moving. I don't care if you got to move wherever. You know, I mean, you still want to be a police officer. Maybe they can transfer you somewhere else, not in the same, you know, office that you're at. Relocate you, you know, somewhere else. Move to another town. You know, if not out of that state, but move to another town. You know, and get you transferred. Because she can always look over her shoulder. She's never going to feel comfortable because she know this man's a violent man. She knows that. So she's not going to feel good. Trust me. She's not going to feel good. You know, right now it's okay because he's not around. You know, he's in jail, but he's going to come out. And you know, and I believe right now she probably still thinking about it. I mean, because look what she did. That was just ugh. Yeah, she need to relocate. She definitely do. That was not cool at all right there. Nah. That's why I say if you, first of all, I just feel like if you not in a relationship, if you are in a relationship or not in a relationship, you should never date a coworker. Because you don't know how that's going to turn out. You know, and look at this situation; it just did not turn out good. And for her to be a married woman and then turn around and cheated on her husband with the coworker, you can definitely understand how the husband felt. But I just feel like that was not worth his job. I would just filed for a divorce and just moved on and did what I had to do. If I had to go to counseling to heal, I would. But this man went in a rage. He wanted blood. That's what he wanted. So, sometimes when you mess with a man's ego, they ain't gonna take it as lightly as a woman. You know what I'm saying? So, oof, that's crazy. I hope she learned from this, and I hope when, if she decides to get in another relationship, she know not to do this because she a grown woman, okay? So you know right from wrong. You know what you was doing was wrong. You know that. You know that was going to destroy your husband, destroy your marriage. You know that was going to come between your job. You know that was going to come between your husband job, the guy you slept with job. It's like you put everybody in a bad situation, not only yourself, but those two men also. So you put three people in a bad situation because of something you wanted to do and something that you did that you know was not right. So she had to take accountability and say, my husband is in jail because of my actions. Because it is because of her actions. Her actions did that. Exactly. Exactly, Denise. Exactly. The co-workers relationship is always the girl, I would never date nobody on my job. Ever, 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 ever. I would never do that. I never did nothing like that. Because things might not go right, and then he might start talking to another woman, and you see it, and you start getting upset, and yeah, nah, it's just too much. It's just too much. But I know she's not going to live the happiest life that she want to live, you know, because she gonna always think about what she did. That's gonna always run across her mind, always. I'm glad she's in counseling because she definitely needs it. But she definitely needs to take accountability how you sat there and you ruined your husband's life because your husband is in prison behind you because you was the cheater. There was a guy dating like three different people, and it went left once they all found out. Ooh, Lord. See? It's just not good. I'm glad that um, she shot him before he got hurt because he probably would have unalived her, you know. But she didn't want to do that to him. She just, you know, hit him to put him down till the police got there. But this is her fault. That's how I view it. This is her fault. It's not her husband's fault. It's her fault and the co-worker, the guy, because both of them knew better. Both of them knew that she knew she was married and he knew she was married. So it was both of their fault. And was it worth it? No, because your husband lost his career. If you feel like you want to be with somebody else, you should have just told your husband and just left him alone. Now that man done lost his whole career behind you cheating on him. So that's crazy. It's definitely crazy. Well, y'all, I'm going to get up off of here. Today is Friday. Thank God. I'm glad. I'm going to get off here and do my other stories. Look at them for next week. And thanks for the coffees from Miss Avis and OG. Thank you so much for the coffees. I appreciate it. And thank you, Carmen, for the $2.99. Appreciate that too. Yep. That was very touching. It really was. That was very, very touching. You know, her husband didn't deserve that neither. He didn't deserve what she did. So I'm just gonna be honest about it. That man did not deserve that. You know. So I ain't gonna sit here and act like she didn't do nothing because she did a lot. She made the man lose his job, put the man in jail. You know what I'm saying? So she was not innocent in this at all. Brittany, you can watch the replay. I'm ready to get off. I'm not going to play no more today because there's not that many people in the chat anyway. So, you know, I'm not going to stay on no longer. When I have a little more people in the chat, I stay on. When I don't, I just get off. Y'all know I don't get that many people anymore like I used to. I don't get that much love anymore. So, you know how that good. But I just still love the people that does come in and does, you know, support me. I still definitely appreciate that all the way. All the way. So, y'all, I will see y'all on Monday. I just hope y'all have a great weekend. Be safe out here. And I love you guys. And I will see you guys on Monday. I didn't know why. Huh? Same to you, Joanne. I agree, Brittany. I definitely agree. A lot of people can't take rejection. They definitely can't. And that's what I'm starting to notice a lot out here in this world today. A lot. It's a lot of that's going on today. A lot of people cannot take rejection at all. And that's the worstest part ever. You know, I mean, we all get rejected when it comes to certain stuff. It ain't got to be in a relationship. It could be anything. You can go out here and take care of business and get rejected from something. You know what I'm saying? You got to learn how to deal with it. Or either you got to learn how to talk about it and fix the situation. You can't always, you know, want to think about hurting somebody because you got rejected from something. It's crazy. Same to you, Brittany. Okay, I will see you guys on Monday. You guys have a good weekend. Peace and love. Be safe out here. Always remember God love you, and always remember keep God first. I love you guys, and I will see you guys on Monday.